Chapter 544. In front of Jiang Xiu, who had dominated the immortal martial arts for more than 3,000 years, Jiang Xiaoyao was too immature and impatient. Perhaps her words would only work after Jiang Xiu had been locked up for a few years. But now Jiang Xiu had only just been locked up. Of course, it was also possible that Jiang Xiaoyao thought that Jiang Xiu was alone and would feel lost and helpless. So she decided to play the role of a savior. "Hey, I'm talking to you, can't you hear me?" Jiang Xiaoyao spoke for a long time, but found that Jiang Xiu didn't even open his eyes. She wondered if this guy was asleep. Of course, it was more likely that he was playing dumb. "Do you really want to stay here for the rest of your life?" Jiang Xiu slowly opened his eyes and said, "Do you think I'll stay here for the rest of my life? You're too naive. Jiang Xiaorao, you want me to marry you? Dream on. In front of Zhengyang Hall, you force my Tianqing school's disciple to death. I will definitely make your Taihua sect pay with your blood." Jiang Xiaoyao's face gradually turned pale. "You're rejecting me because of this?" Jiang Xiu coldly smiled. This was only one of the reasons. Just because she was a disciple of the Taihua sect, he definitely wouldn't marry her. For him, Jiang Luoxia, to be the Taihua sect's son-in-law, he wasn't worthy. It was simply a great humiliation to him. Only people like the Ji Dao sect would come to the outer sect to seek benefits for themselves. Jiang Xiu definitely wouldn't use the outer sect to help him take back the position of sect master. Even if he succeeded in the future, it would be a huge stain on Jiang Xiu's life. He couldn't face it. Of course, Jiang Xiu definitely wouldn't tell her these reasons. It's his own fault for being stupid. I just said a few words to him. How can he blame me? The veins on Jiang Xiu's forehead popped out. Besides, even my granduncle didn't say anything. Why are you so anxious? Right now, the Ji Dao sect has to rely on the Taihua sect to stabilize its position as the sect master. If he dares to have any opinions about the people of the Taihua sect, he has already become a lackey of the Taihua sect. Jiang Xiu didn't expect that even though the Ji Daoist sect had won the sect master's throne and reached the supreme position, they had lost their backbone and couldn't straighten their back. "Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better stay away from me when you see me. I don't know when I won't be able to control myself and chop your head off." Jiang Xiaoyao's pale face flushed red. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. "Jiang Xiu, you've got guts. I'll definitely make you regret what you said today." In the Tianqing school's main hall, which used to belong to Jiang Luoxia, now belonged to Ji Daozong, Madame Ji said coldly, "Why did you let Jiang Xiu go?" Ji Daozong said, "Could it be that you want me to kill him?" Madame Ji said, "If he can't be used by us, then he must die. You've seen his talent. It's even below Jiang Luoxia's. Even without the guidance of a god cultivator, he will become a great person in the future, and become our enemy." "When did you become so soft-hearted?" Ji Daozong sat down. There was a long table next to him with an incense burner. The incense on the burner was refreshing and calming. "It's not that I'm soft-hearted. It's just that you didn't notice the gazes of the law enforcement elders led by Xiaoshan. These people are still thinking about that person from before. If I act barbarically, they will definitely oppose me. Could it be that you want them to use the 6 soldiers' disarming armor?" Madame Ji said. "So what? Are you sure you'll lose?" Ji Daozong raised his head and looked at the beauty in front of him. A trace of pain flashed through his eyes. "Yes, I might not lose. But do you know what the consequences will be if I lose? My sect's prestige will be swept to the ground. I might even lose my position as sect head." Ji Daozong said, "Do you think it's worth it to take such a big risk for a fledgling with only outstanding talent?" The anger on Madame Ji's face gradually calmed down. "Your position as sect head will definitely not be lost as long as my Taihua sect is here." Ji Daozong said, "The Tianqing school's people have long been influenced by that person to become untamed and bloodthirsty. Once they find out that the 6 soldiers' disarming armor can win, they will definitely want me to step down. Don't tell me it will be a massacre." Taihua sect is an outsider in the end. Madame Ji's face flashed with a strange expression, but she didn't say anything. "Moreover, it's not easy to kill that kid. Any great celestial immortal can do it. Why do you have to go against those old fellows?" I think that Gu Deqian will definitely want to take revenge for his precious son. Madame Ji fell silent. Ji Daozong's words were against his will. A dignified sect head had been contradicted and couldn't be dealt with. This was a loss of prestige. Madame Ji knew how much Ji Daozong cared about his reputation. He was simply swallowing his broken teeth. He was still afraid of the Tianxing school's elders. Ji Daozong's change today was because Xiaoye had whispered a few words in his ear. What did Elder Xiao say to you? Ji Daozong lightly flicked his loose sleeves and seemed to casually say, nothing much. Just a few words. Your cousin came over, so you should properly entertain her. Don't let this matter affect your mood. The more Ji Daozong didn't say anything, the more Madame Ji felt that something was wrong. Cousin should be resting now. That night, around midnight, the moon was hanging in the sky. Ji Daozong opened his eyes and noticed that Madame Ji was sleeping soundly. He quietly sat up and got off the bed. He found a piece of clothing and put it on. He took a step forward and turned into a cloud of smoke, disappearing into the night. As soon as Ji Daozong left, Madame Ji, who was pretending to be asleep, opened her eyes. Where is he going? In the next moment, Ji Daozong appeared at the immortal graveyard mountain. Madame Ji also followed closely. However, she didn't dare to get too close. She appeared outside the palace and only looked in the direction Ji Daozong disappeared in. Although they were both immortal kings, with Ji Daozong's cultivation, she would be discovered if she got too close. That's the direction of the immortal graveyard mountain. Why is he going there? Madame Ji lowered her head and thought. She recalled the scene of Xiaoye whispering in Ji Daozong's ear. She felt that it must be because of that sentence. After hesitating for a moment, she still followed. Ji Daozong arrived in front of Jiang Luoxia's tomb. Because he cared too much about it, he had specially asked for a talisman to open the tombstone. He easily pulled up the tombstone, looked around and entered. Why did he enter Jiang Luoxia's tomb? Ji Daozong definitely didn't expect that his wife would follow him and see this scene. He entered the tomb and opened the jade coffin. Although he was mentally prepared, when he saw that there was no one in the coffin, his expression changed greatly. A trace of fear flashed through his eyes. No, this doesn't make sense. I saw it with my own eyes. You can't be alive. Someone must be pretending to be a ghost and stole your corpse to make a fuss. It must be. He felt that the cause of this was Jiang Xiu. Those people had always been dissatisfied with him sitting on the supreme throne of the sect master. They must be plotting to overthrow him. Someone who looked like Jiang Xiu and was extremely talented appeared and gave them a chance. Who is it? Who could it be? Ji Daozong's face was extremely ferocious. His horse grin looked very scary. His eyes in the dark were even scarier. He was both angry and paranoid. Is it the old ghost of the law enforcement hall or the freak of the quest sword hall? Or is it Ingho Xiaoye Lu Changkong, those rascals? Ji Daozong's stiff neck kept twitching as if he was possessed by the devil. He stared at the empty coffin, but the scene at that time appeared in his mind. No matter who it is, I won't be afraid of you. Never. The position of the sect master was originally mine. Mine. He seemed to have forgotten that it was late at night, and that he secretly came to the immortal burial mountain. He roared in anger and agitation. His roar was especially frightening in the night. I must become an immortal emperor as soon as possible. Only when I become an immortal emperor can you do nothing to me. When Madame Ji heard this voice, she frowned and revealed a strange expression. It's Daozong. What's wrong with him? At this moment, his roar was like a collapsed beast. It made people feel the anger in his heart, but more than that, it was fear. If it was only Jiang Xiu who contradicted him, and he was forced to compromise under the pressure of the elders, he wouldn't have such a big reaction. This kind of thing had happened before. What did Xiaoye say to him today? Chapter 545. It was very late at night, and the valley was very quiet. It was so quiet that it made people feel uncomfortable. The wind blew the leaves, and the branches swayed like demons. When Ji Daozong came back, he found that the lights in the hall were on. Madame Ji was waiting for him with her clothes on. Her face revealed an unnatural expression. Why are you awake? Madame Ji didn't answer and instead asked, Where did you go? Ji Daozong said. I couldn't sleep, so I went out for a walk. Madame Ji looked at Ji Daozong. His face was a bit pale and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked very haggard. Her heart was slightly moved. I saw you go to the immortal burial mountain. Ji Daozong's expression greatly changed as he fiercely glared at her like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He shouted. You dared to follow me? Madame Ji said. I was worried about you. Worried about me? Ji Daozong said. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Daozong, what happened to you? What did Xiaoya say to you? Ji Daozong squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. Jiang Luoxiao isn't dead. He's back. Boom. Madame Ji felt her mind explode as her eyes widened. She shouted in disbelief. What did you say? Jiang Luoxiao isn't dead? How is that possible? Impossible. Ji Daozong said. I don't believe it either. However, I just went to Jiang Luoxiao's tomb, and there was no corpse in the coffin. He's still alive. He's definitely still alive. Daozong, don't scare yourself. There's no way he's still alive. Ji Daozong said. Then how did the corpse disappear? Madame Ji's face was a bit pale. Nothing was more frightening than this. In the past 1,000 years, Jiang Luoxia had been a dark cloud hanging over the heads of the spiritual state sections. He would never see the light of day. Maybe someone purposely stole the corpse. Ji Daozong said. Jiang Luo's graveyard was specially enchanted with a special talisman. Anything brought out from inside will be destroyed by the talisman. Unless it's a living thing. Madame Ji's expression became very ugly. Xiaoya told you this today? Yes. Madame Ji said. Heart-wrenching words, heart-wrenching words. Xiaoya said those words to you at that time. His intentions are heart-wrenching. Daozong, don't believe him. Who knows, maybe he was the one who took the corpse away. Ji Daozong flew into a rage. This sect has already said that you can't take it out unless it's alive. Madame Ji said. Xiaoya is a genius. Perhaps he has a way? There's no way, there's nothing. Madame Ji also seemed to be a little flustered. If Jiang Luoxia is really not dead, then he will definitely come back to take everything back. Why is he not showing himself? That means he is already dead. Even if he is not dead, we can kill him once in the past. We can kill him again now. Jiang Xiu was sitting cross-legged in a cell of the law enforcement hall. His requirements for the environment could be very high or very low. However, the law enforcement hall was a special place. The environment was very good. Although it was a cell, it could also be said to be a spacious and elegant room. There was even incense inside like the other places. After losing his soul, Jiang Xiu felt as though he had been freed from a certain kind of comfort when he cultivated. His cultivation had become simple, and all he needed to do was to comprehend the laws and enter the divine transformation physique. Moreover, he didn't seem to have any restrictions when comprehending the laws. It was as if comprehending the mysteries of the laws that were hidden by his soul had been lifted. The wispy smoke in front of him became a straight line. This was the wind law that Jiang Xiu was controlling. The profound meaning of the wind was the hardest to comprehend. At this moment, Jiang Xiu was comprehending this law. I've finally touched the door. The heavenly fire law was too late. Jiang Xiu gave up for the time being. It was not realistic for him to rush to the perfected stage now. First of all, his realm was not enough. He couldn't comprehend the heavenly fire law either. He had to at least reach the peak of the heaven immortal realm to have a chance to fuse the heavenly fire law, and finally reach the perfected stage. Therefore, he changed his direction to comprehend the laws. The comprehension of the laws had a little less to do with resources. It relied more on talent and opportunities. Heavens! The smoke in front of Jiang Xiu formed the word heavens, and then slowly dissipated. The wind is actually so ingenious. Just now he saw the incense and had an idea. He entered the state of comprehension. Sure enough, the progress was quite gratifying. He barely touched the door. Phew. He also heaved a sigh of relief. He had survived without a soul. This made Jiang Xiu feel very strange. Once a person lost their soul, they would definitely die. However, he had survived. He was worried that he couldn't comprehend new external laws without a soul. After all, the Godhead was compatible with the soul. Now he was finally relieved. However, he was really puzzled. How could a person live without a soul? Was the lesser fate technique so powerful? Or did he mutate because of it? Jiang Xiu looked at his newly added divine Tao patterns and revealed a thoughtful expression. A thought flashed through his mind. Was it because of his Protoss bloodline? He had heard that a certain Protoss could still live after his head was chopped off. Moreover, he had lived for a very long time. Now he had survived without a soul. Jiang Xiu had long concluded that his Protoss bloodline was very good. However, there were no similar Protoss descriptions in ancient books. He suspected that his bloodline should be very ancient. What Protoss did not have a soul? Jiang Xiu's memory did not have such a thing. He needed to flip through ancient books. It would be best if he took the time to go to Shenzhou. That place was called Shenzhou because countless Protoss had gathered there. It would be easier to find information about Protoss there. Unraveling the mystery of his Protoss bloodline would, of course, be more beneficial to his cultivation. In the following days, Shangguan Zhaorong would deliver 3 meals to him on time every day. Moreover, the successor battle continued in an orderly manner. It was not affected by Jiang Xiu's matter in the slightest. Everything seemed to have returned to peace. Junior brother Jiang, you have such a good talent. How did you end up on the path of divine cultivation? The disciplinary hall's guard was bored and looked for Jiang Xiu to chat. Jiang Xiu was in jail, so he had to accompany Jiang Xiu. At the beginning of cultivation, I fumbled around on my own. Therefore, I muddle-headedly walked on this path. Jiang Xiu casually answered while eating the food Shangguan Zhaorong gave him. What a pity. If you were an immortal cultivator, I reckon you would have been able to leave long ago. If Jiang Xiu was an immortal cultivator, the Sikh Sword Hall's elders would fight for him. Jiang Xiu said, a divine cultivator can't leave? It's difficult. Jiang Xiu smiled. Ever since he appeared, the Tianqing school seemed calm on the surface, but underneath, it was already surging like a storm. If Jiang Xiu couldn't even feel this, he definitely wouldn't have been able to climb to the sect master's throne. I heard that another guest came today. What guest? Jiang Xiu asked curiously. The disciplinary hall was located very far away from the outside world. The mountain peaks were separated, and sound couldn't pass through. It could be said that it was completely isolated from the outside world. However, the disciplinary hall's disciples would tell Jiang Xiu some things about the outside world. I heard that it's a friend of the former sect master. He came to ask about something? Jiang Xiu's heart stirred. The former sect master Zhang's friend? That's right. Jiang Xiu asked, who is it? This really surprised Jiang Xiu. There was actually someone who came to visit. Jiang Xiu's choice of friends was even more stringent. Not only did he have to like their character, but their strength also had to be on par with him. Jiang Xiu's EQ wasn't high, but his personal charisma was still very good. It was impossible for the image of an ambitious and ruthless person to not attract people. But the strange thing was that Jiang Luoxia had died long ago. This news had already spread throughout the immortal martial continent. He was already dead, so why would a friend come looking for him? He seems to be from the Tsang prefecture. His name is Yan Longyue, and he's also an immortal king with a great background. Jiang Xiu muttered in his heart. It's him. Jiang Xiu had met Yan Longyue in the Tsang prefecture. The two had exchanged blows before. At that time, Jiang Luoxia's anger had been too quick, and many people didn't like him. Yan Longyue was one of them. However, this person's status was revered, and he was already an overlord. Although Jiang Xiu's reputation was resounding, he was still far from being able to compare to him. But later on, the two of them became acquainted because of a certain matter. One of Yan Longyue's sons was killed. At that time, the spearhead was pointed at Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu was even pursued by Yan Longyue because of this. However, during the pursuit, Yan Longyue discovered that Jiang Luoxia was an extremely arrogant person. He wouldn't deny the things he had done. Later on, he really discovered that the murderer wasn't Jiang Xiu. Why is he here? Chapter 546. Jiang Xiu was very puzzled. The Tsang state was not close to the Qing state. There was no need to make a trip here. If it was to pay respects to him, Jiang Xiu knew that Yin Longyue was not a sentimental person. But the visit of this old friend was definitely not good for Jiang Xiu. It was only bad. In front of his old friend, the risk of him being exposed would be greater. And he was alone. He absolutely did not know how the situation in front of him would affect Tianqing School. The most important thing now was whether he could win if the 6 soldiers' disarming armor appeared. However, even if he could win, with the current strength of Jiang Xiu, how could he sit on the supreme throne on the ground? He could only lose his life. He saw it very clearly. The most important thing now was cultivation. In the silent mountains, in the continuous majestic mountains, the spiritual fog did not disperse all year round. There were roars of beasts and monsters in the market, which was very scary. The scorching sun in the sky scattered, shining the fog with golden light. It was beautiful and magnificent. The whole mountain was like a golden sea rolling in the mountains. Come out for some fresh air. Jiang Xiu had not been exposed to the sun for a while. When the sun shone on his face, he was very uncomfortable. He slowly walked under the care of the law enforcement disciples. "Why is it so good today? Let me out," the one on the side said. "I don't have this right." It was ordered by the higher-ups. In the distant mountains, a majestic figure stood on top of a lone peak. The wind was ethereal and the sunlight shone on his face, giving off a dark hue. However, Jiang Xiu only needed to see him to recognize that he was Lan Longyue. Oh! The terrible roar resounded, and the big trees in the mountain shook violently. Many outer and inner disciples would enter the deep mountains to gain experience and fight with strange beasts and monsters. It could be said that it was the cultivation field of Tianqing School. "By the way, has Zhangzhou's Yin Longyue left?" the law enforcement disciple said. "I heard that he hasn't. Are you interested in such a high-level matter?" This law enforcement disciple had a scholar's head tied with a long scholar's belt. Coupled with a green robe, he looked like an immortal. Anyone would be curious about the visit of such a big shot like Lan Longyue. Big shots have big ambitions. Do you know why he came to our Tianqing School? The law enforcement disciple looked very indignant. "Why have you come?" "He's here to borrow the heavenly mirror." Jiang Xiu paused. He was also very surprised. The heavenly mirror was the foundation of the Tianqing School's establishment. It was ranked 9th on the immortal martial ranking. How could such a powerful immortal martial ranking be lent to someone else? Even if it was only a small volume, it would be a supreme treasure. However, with Jiang Xiu's return from Earth, the ranking of the immortal martial rankings would probably have to be changed. The Fate technique and the Great God Sealing technique would definitely be ranked before the immortal martial rankings. Hee, Jiang Xiu smiled. "What are you laughing at?" Jiang Xiu was laughing. This reason and excuse for coming to the Tianqing School was really laughable. What did Lan Longyue use in exchange for borrowing the heavenly mirror? His cultivation method was also completely different. What was the use of only reading a part of it? Of course, he definitely had a reason to read it, but Jiang Xiu didn't believe it. In addition, the heavenly mirror's power was ranked 9th on the immortal martial ranking, because the complete heavenly mirror's power was formidable. However, when it was passed to Jiang Xiu, the heavenly mirror had already lost a few important parts. The successive Tianqing School's sect masters had passed down this saying: "If the mirror exists, the person lives. If the mirror fails, the person dies." This thing was more important than the sect master's life. No matter what, it would be lent to someone else. Did he refuse? Yes, he refused. Jiang Xiu was really worried that the Ji Daoist sect would once again betray the sect's interests. He had already done it once, so he would definitely do it again. Suddenly, Jiang Xiu's expression changed. "Who arranged for me to come out here?" "I'm not sure either. It just so happened that Yin Longyue had come, and he was pulled out for a walk." Jiang Xiu secretly thought that perhaps his old friend was secretly observing him from somewhere. After all, some people were already suspicious of him, while others were adding fuel to the fire. "Today's weather is really good. It's a rare warm day after autumn. Then I'll walk a little longer." The law enforcement disciple didn't know how long Jiang Xiu would be locked up in the Hall of Law Enforcement. It could be a year, 10 years, 100 years, or even a lifetime. However, he felt that it was unlikely that he would be able to leave this autumn. After autumn was winter, and the Tianqing School's winter would be very cold. Especially in the mountains where the Hall of Law Enforcement was located, the cold air would not dissipate. Even cultivators like them would be so cold that they would have to burn charcoal stoves. On a distant mountain, Yin Longyue said, there are indeed some similarities, but since he's a spirit cultivator, and has also grasped the laws of time and space, and can even combine them into a world's laws, this is absolutely impossible. A person can't have such earth-shattering changes in a short few decades. It can only be two people. Don't scare yourself, Ji Daozong said, but it's really too similar. Yin Longyue had been staring at Jiang Xiu. Although separated by several mountains and thousands of meters, he could still clearly see Jiang Xiu, even if it was a pore on his face. It does give people this kind of illusion. This lord has it too. A scene from many years ago appeared in his mind. Many years ago, his pride made him not have the courage to find this old friend, but in exchange he had an even more humble self-esteem. On the surface, he had gained everything, but in reality, he knew in his heart that what he had lost was far more than what he had gained. And he still had to stay with this group of rats living in the gutter. Yin Longyue's gaze retracted from Jiang Xiu. How do you plan to deal with this person? Ji Daozong said. Kill him once and for all. That's indeed the most straightforward way to do it. In Yin Longyue's mind, Jiang Xiu's wild and unrestrained appearance as he raised his wineglass high. Tianqing School was his root. It was he who built Tianqing School, and Tianqing School had also helped him. This is a rare talent in Tianqing School. As the sect master of Tianqing School, are you willing to part with him? Ji Daozong sneered in his heart. If he had boarded their ship, of course they would be family. But this boy disdained to be with them. This deeply hurt Ji Daozong's self-esteem, and at the same time he also felt incomparably angry. An ant dared to look down on him? But his face showed a very regretful expression, and he helplessly sighed. Ai, this boy can only be a scourge. Many people in the sect want to make an issue out of him. He is the fuse. Only by pulling it out early can my Tianqing School return to peace. Yin Longyue's heart was full of disdain. There was no tolerance at all. In this person's hands, Tianqing School would only gradually become mediocre, and eventually disappear in the long river of history. That's right. How is Yin country? Ji Daozong asked. Is it still stable? Yin Longyue said. Thank you for your concern, sect master. Everything is fine. That's good. If there is anything you need my Tianqing School to help with, feel free to ask. Yin Longyue said. Yes, Yin country is in the middle of the two big countries in Songzhou. It is inevitable that we will need the help of Tianqing School's Taihua sect. Your sect's stability is my Yin country's stability. He definitely did not want anything to happen to Ji Daozong. The two elders fought in the wind, their clothes fluttering in the wind. They were very impressive, and they each held their postures. In the distance, Jiang Xiu faced the sun and walked unhurriedly. He was like a sheathed knife, no longer sharp. Yin Longyue said, Sect Master, I have a presumptuous request. Can you arrange for me to meet this little brother? Ji Daozong said, That's even better. However, there is no need to arrange this matter. Yin Longyue can do as he pleases. Yin Longyue smiled. Everyone was an expert at fighting sparrows. It was a competition of patience. Whoever could endure to the end would be the final winner. Anyone who achieved great things knew the word patience. Some people would wait for you to show off to the end. When you only had one card left in your hand, then you would blow it up. There was no need to say more about what would happen next. How is the successor battle outside? Jiang Xiu walked for a while and asked in boredom. It's the same as before. Other than your appearance that shocked people, everything else is the same. The successor battle that occurs once every 5 years, and once every 10 years will not have any accidents. In a one-on-one battle, the chance factor was very small. Basically, whoever was stronger would win. Let's go back. I think they have seen enough. They, Jiang Xiu said. A person who traveled thousands of miles to see me. A person who should not have come. A person who completely exceeded my expectations. In his heart, he was thinking before Chung Lingsu used the Great Destiny technique on me. What happened? Things were more complicated than Jiang Xiu imagined. Chapter 547. For the first time, Jiang Xiu was able to go out for a walk. After returning, Jiang Xiu continued to cultivate as usual, as if nothing had happened. He paid no attention to the outside world, and only focused on reading the sage books. What's more, there were iron bars in front of Jiang Xiu. Although he was engrossed in cultivation, after his resources were limited, it was difficult for him to improve. After so many days, he only touched the door of the heavenly wind law. It was almost negligible. However, after experiencing the situation on Earth where it was difficult to improve, the situation now was much better. Jiang Xiu had something in mind, so he was still calm and composed. Late at night, the law enforcement disciples were already deep in the water. After autumn, the Tianqing school was a little cold. Although it was not as unbearable as winter, they were unwilling to get out of bed. A breeze blew in from outside, and the doors and windows swayed slightly, making squeaking sounds. The law enforcement disciple's head tilted to the side, and he fainted. Then, a figure appeared in front of the prison yard. This figure was very tall, and wore a coat full of black feathers. He walked in unhurriedly. The chains hung on the door. When he pushed, they jingled. The movement was not loud, but in the quiet night, it was exceptionally loud. Jiang Xiu naturally woke up. He opened his eyes and saw the man walking slowly. Jiang Xiu's first reaction was to think of a killer. Who is it? The other party's aura was very powerful. So powerful that it made Jiang Xiu feel afraid. This was the powerful aura of a celestial king. If Jiang Xiu was at his peak, he would not be afraid. But now he was only a god. The other party could kill him with a move of his finger. Is it Gu Deqian? Jiang Xiu's first thought was of course him. The hatred of his son's death was absolutely irreconcilable. He immediately became vigilant. Now he could only rely on the minor fate technique that was sometimes effective. No, it's not him. The person who came was much taller than Gu Deqian. Moreover, the person had a domineering aura. Gu Deqian was much more reserved. It was not him. Slowly, the figure walked into the dim candlelight. Jiang Xiu saw his appearance clearly. The other party's face was resolute, and he had a dignified square face. He stared at Jiang Xiu like a beast staring at its prey. Jiang Xiu's heart skipped a beat. He almost said it was you, but he immediately realized that he did not know him at all. If he said it, he would be exposed. Who are you? He said. Don't recognize me? It's okay if you don't. You should know that I'm here to save you. Jiang Xiu said, save me. Yes, come with me. The elders of the Tianqing school that you hope for will not be able to fight against the Jidao sect. Behind the Jidao sect stands the Taihua sect, and the Jidao sect does not want to fight with the elders. The two groups of people will only endure, and you will become a forgotten chess piece. The person who came was none other than Jiang Xiu's old friend, Lan Longyue. His words shocked Jiang Xiu. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. Lan Longyue saw clearly from the outside. Indeed, the possibility of what he said was very high. I don't know what you're talking about. Moreover, I don't know you. He said. Song Prefecture's Lan Country Lan Longyue. Immortal kings were all great figures standing at the top of the pyramid. Every one of them was famous in immortal martial arts. Just hearing about them would make one's heart tremble, especially those who dominated a region. Lan Longyue was such a powerhouse. Anyone who heard of him would feel as if thunder had struck their ears. Jiang Xiu was shocked. You're Lan Longyue? Lan Longyue smiled gently. What? I don't look like it. Even if you're stupid, you can still feel the powerful immortal king aura on me. I'm not doubting your identity. Jiang Xiu looked up. Under the dim candlelight, his face was a little red. I'm just curious, why did you come? Lan Longyue said. I appreciate that you're a talent and want to save you. Jiang Xiu laughed. Many times, saving you was harming you. Lan Longyue's words were very tempting and sounded invulnerable, but Jiang Xiu knew what kind of person this person was. Do you know what the consequences are if I escape from this prison? Lan Longyue said. You'll become an honored guest of my Lan country. You'll have endless glory and wealth. Also, I'll help you with your cultivation resources. I can help you become someone like Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Xiu shook his head. You don't believe me? Jiang Xiu said. Once I escape from here, even though it's clearly sect master Ji bending the law for personal gain, it'll be me fleeing from punishment. From then on, I'll be a fugitive of the Heaven Motion sect and Taihua sect. Do you think a tiny country like Yin can protect me? Lan Longyue said. Wealth comes from danger. If you don't come with me today, you'll stay here forever and be forgotten. In the end, you'll turn into a pile of bones and waste your life. You dare to go against the Ji Dao sect, but don't you have the courage to break out of Tianqing school? Jiang Xiu said. I'll never punish myself for other people's mistakes. I won't stay here forever. Lan Longyue said. You're that confident? Jiang Xiu's cold eyes swept over. The fact that you're here is my greatest confidence. Yan Longyue's face stiffened, and a trace of inexplicable panic flashed across his face. At this moment, he felt as if the other party knew a secret hidden deep in his heart. This was a very bad feeling, and his heart was shocked. No wonder so many people in the Sky Motion sect would suspect that the person in front of them was not Jiang Luoxia, even though they knew it was him. At this moment, he also felt that the person standing in front of him was Jiang Luoxia. But at this moment, there was movement outside. Someone had come, and from the brightness of the fire, there should be many people. Lan Longyue said. Then you're on your own. As soon as he finished speaking, his coat, which was covered with black feathers, shook. His entire body turned into black smoke and drifted away, disappearing without a trace. Lan Longyue. It was a strong sword light flying in from outside the door, but it was still too late. Lan Longyue had already left. With the sword light, law enforcement elder Xia instantly appeared in front of Jiang Xiu. His face was full of terrible anger, and his eyes suddenly swept over to Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu's face showed a trace of bitterness. Originally, he had nothing to do with Yan Longyue, but now even if he jumped into the Yellow River, he wouldn't be able to clear his name. What was even more troublesome was how he, Jiang Xiu, knew Yan Longyue. This expert from the Tsang state was a good friend of the previous sect leader, Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Xiu's trip to the Sky Motion sect was also because of Jiang Luoxia's old friend. He was tricked. Faced with Elder Xia's questioning and angry eyes, Jiang Xiu knew that no matter how he explained, it was useless. He could only say that it was clear who was tricked. But the more terrible thing still happened. Law enforcement elder didn't ask him. He was sure of this matter. The way he looked at Jiang Xiu gradually changed. Originally, he felt that he was like Jiang Luoxia. Then Jiang Luoxia's body was missing, and now Jiang Luoxia's old friend came to save him. Everything pointed to Jiang Xiu. You want to escape? Jiang Xiu said. I want to escape, but I've already escaped. Besides, I don't even know who he is. Although he knew that it was useless to explain, Jiang Xiu was still very unwilling. He had to explain, otherwise it would be taken as a tacit admission. Xia Shun looked at Jiang Xiu and muttered. Jiang Xiu didn't know what he was thinking. He had met this person many times before. He was one of the few people he hated. When Jiang Luoxia was in Tianqing school, he said a word and the whole Tianqing school had to take off their pants. But this old man in front of him would only take off half of his pants. The other half was held back by his so-called rules and laws of Tianqing school. Then what is he doing here? Jiang Xiu said bluntly. He wants to take me away. He could only tell this. Otherwise, it would be stupid to make up any excuse. Then why don't you leave? Jiang Xiu said. It was clearly sect master Ji who bent the law for personal gain. Why do I have to be a traitor who fled for fear of punishment? Impudent. Xia Shun's expression changed and he angrily scolded. How can a disciple like you criticize the sect master? But he only reprimanded him and didn't continue. He looked at Jiang Xiu one last time, and then turned to leave. Jiang Xiu was a bit sad. He then smiled and sincerely said, whoever blows up first is an idiot. This was clearly the Ji Dao sect's first move. He didn't know if the elders here would do it. In any case, Jiang Xiu had the trump card. He definitely wouldn't use it until his strength returned to its peak. Yanlong Yu? What did that matter in the past have to do with the Yan country? Chapter 548. The law enforcement disciple who had been knocked out came early in the morning as usual. He was the one who transferred Shangguan Jiarong to deliver breakfast. When he saw Jiang Xiao, the first thing he asked was, "I heard that you want to escape?" Jiang Xiao said, "If I really wanted to escape, you wouldn't have seen me here." He said, "You think you can escape? Although I've been knocked out, once an outsider invades the law enforcement hall and casts a spell, the law enforcement elder will know. You can't escape at all." Of course, Jiang Xiao knew this. There was a large array outside the law enforcement hall. Jiang Xiao just smiled. Although the law enforcement hall was an inescapable net, the one who came last night was a celestial king. His strength was enough to rescue Jiang Xiao before the law enforcement hall's elders arrived. Jiang Xiao said, "I don't need to escape. You keep dreaming." It seemed that he was a little embarrassed after being knocked out last night. He blamed it on Jiang Xiao, thinking that it was his friend who hit him. In the end, more than 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Jiang Xiao stayed in the law enforcement hall's prison. He didn't know the situation outside, but he thought that he must be very nervous. If it was calm, it was the calm before the storm. On this day, law enforcement elder Xia Shun suddenly came. He asked Jiang Xiao, "Do you want to go to the swordsmanship hall or the law enforcement hall?" Jiang Xiao said, "Are you going to let me out?" Xia Shun said, "It might not be a good thing to go out, but if you're locked up here, it will slow down your cultivation progress. We've discussed with the sect master. Your mistake is not serious. You've been here for so long, and the punishment is enough. But you have to choose your own path after going out." The swordsmanquist hall was for swordsmanship. It couldn't be helped. Most of the people in the Celestial Motion sect were sword cultivators. It was also the core of the Celestial Motion sect. As for the law enforcement hall, it was in charge of the laws of the Celestial Motion sect. It had a lot of power, but it also had a lot of restrictions. Actually, what Jiang Xiao wanted the most was to be an unaffiliated person, or go to the God Cultivator department. However, that place was extremely abandoned. Even the Peak Master of God Cultivator Peak might not be of a higher standard than Jiang Xiao's. He said, "Shouldn't I be going to Divine Cultivator Peak?" Xia Shun said, "This is also where we are troubled. Our Tianqing school's God Cultivators are not even comparable to the small sects in Divine Continent. If you go to Divine Cultivator Peak, I'm afraid you will be delayed. The resources there are also very limited." Actually, he also knew in his heart that it was the most suitable place for him. With Jiang Xiao's talent, he actually did not need that master. At most, they could give him pointers on immortal martial techniques, but they could not help him in real cultivation. However, Jiang Xiao still had to face Gu Diqian's revenge. He said, "The resources just have to be on the same level as the core disciples." Divine Cultivator Peak was also in the top 3 peaks. As long as he could go up, then he would have a chance to find the resources he had hidden. He did not have to worry about resources at all. Xia Shun said, "Don't forget, you killed Gu Qian in the successor battle." This reminder was already very overboard. It was hinting to Jiang Xiao that Gu Diqian would seek revenge on him. The sect's rules forbade life and death in the successor battle. That was an arena, just like how boxers on Earth died in a boxing match. However, people were always unable to distinguish this point. Xia Shun also did not have confidence in his sect's elders. At that time, Gu Diqian had already rushed onto the stage without a care for anything, and wanted to make a move on Jiang Xiao. Facing the pursuit of an immortal king, Jiang Xiao naturally did not have much confidence. But whether it was going to the swordsmanship-seeking sect or the law enforcement hall, the location was not in the top 3 peaks. Although Jiang Xiao had someone to take care of him, he still had to think of a way to go up the top 3 peaks. If he could not go up, it would delay his cultivation. Jiang Xiao said, "Even if I go to the swordsmanship-seeking sect or the law enforcement hall, could it be that I have to follow behind the elders all day long? There will always be a time when I am alone. Sooner or later, I will have to face the medicine. Why should I shrink back?" Xia Shun said, Since you have already made up your mind, then do as you wish. This time he was imprisoned, it took more than a month. The successor battle outside had already ended. As for who won, Jiang Xiu did not care. In any case, it was not him and there was no reward. In fact, he was very curious in his heart. How did the Jidao sect and the elders reach an agreement? Or did they not reach an agreement? And it was just a temporary relief. Young master. Seeing that Jiang Xiu had returned, everyone in the room was so happy that they almost came out. Young master is back. Jiang Xiu said, pack your things. We are going to the upper 3 peaks. The upper 3 peaks? In every place, the location often reflected the status. In Tianqing School, the people who lived in the upper 3 peaks were the people at the top of the Tianqing School. Ordinary disciples were forbidden to go to the upper 3 peaks. The sky was higher there, and the spiritual qi was richer. Usually the sky was almost close at hand. Originally, Shenxiu Peak could not be in the upper 3 peaks. However, when the Tianqing School was completely biased towards immortal cultivation, Shenxiu was also a big sect. Of course, it was qualified. The maids were very excited. Was the sky clear after the rain? The upper 3 peaks were the most high-class places in the sect. The spiritual cultivation peak of the upper 3 peaks did not have so many empty rooms. There were very few palaces here, and there was a large number of palace wreckage. Some of the pillars were half buried in the ground. Jiang Xiu even thought that there was such a place in the sect. Speaking of which, in his previous life, he did not pay much attention to Shenxiu Peak. He did not even remember what the peak master looked like. He saw a group of people dragging luggage and flying over. An old man and 2 young children came up from Shenxiu Peak. When they saw Jiang Xiu, they said with a smile, "We have received a notice from the inner cabinet that the new direct disciple is coming." Jiang Xiu bowed and said, "I am Jiang Xiu." Jiang Xiu? The old man's hair was white, his eyes were sunken, and there were wrinkles on his skin. He looked like an old man, but in fact his fate was not young. Hearing this, he was very surprised. "What's wrong?" The old man shook his head in a panic and said, "There used to be someone with this name." Back then, when he first entered Tianqing School, he mentioned to some of his fellow disciples that his original name was Jiang Xiu. Later, after the master gave him the order, he gradually forgot about it. This old man was old. Did he still remember? "Oh, who is it?" The old man smiled and said, "People have the same name. When the previous sect master first came to the sect, his name was Jiang Xiu." Jiang Xiu's face turned unnaturally pale. This was a huge mistake on his part. He didn't think that the Sky Motion sect would use their real names to hide their identities. He didn't think that this would cause trouble for him. At this moment, the thought of killing him flashed through Jiang Xiu's mind. However, the old man did not seem to suspect anything at all. Shenxiu Peak was a little far from the core area. In addition, the system was different. It was basically at the edge of the sect and even felt a little isolated. "You are very welcome. Spiritual Cultivation Peak has not had a disciple for a long time. Some of them are Shenxiu itinerant cultivators who came to join us because of our Tianqing School's reputation. Their talent is also very limited. Qingfeng Mingyue, bring your senior brother to settle down." Jiang Xiu bowed to the old man, and then brought a scary person into the sect. No matter how bad Spiritual Cultivation Peak was, it was still a place of the 3 upper peaks. The residence of a successor disciple would naturally not be bad. It was 4 to 5 times bigger than the original place, and the standard was also raised by many levels. Li Chang and the maids were very excited. Jiang Xiu was still thinking about what had just happened. He called the servant over and ordered, "Just now, the old peak master said that my name is the same as the previous sect master's before he was born. Remember not to mention it carelessly. It will cause big trouble. Do you understand?" Jiang Xiu would never tell them anything. Once he spoke, they naturally understood the seriousness of the situation. After all, this was related to the previous sect master. Yes, this servant will remember. Yes, this subordinate will remember. On Shenxiu Peak, there were more than 300 people, including the servants. There were less than 100 true Shenxiu. Compared to the other peaks, it could be said to be extremely bleak. Then, his gaze fell on the Peak Master's palace. He felt that he could not be too reckless. Many people knew that he was called Jiang Xiu back then. Although almost all of his senior and junior brothers had died to help him back then. Would the Ji Daozong know? He was much older than Jiang Xiu. Although they had not interacted at that time. Would he have heard about it and then set up this trap for him? Young Master, Spiritual Tea. Jiang Xiu remembered something. Every disciple would fill in their personal information before entering the sect. Even if the Ji Daozong did not know, when he thought about flipping through Jiang Luoxia's information, he would definitely see that the name was Jiang Xiu. No, I have to go to the scripture storage peak. Chapter 549. Jiang Xiu decided that he had to destroy all the information about Jiang Luoxia. Otherwise, he would really be forced to do a blood test. At that time, it would be confirmed that he was Jiang Luoxia, and what awaited him would be death. In the immortal martial continent, all the major sects had a complete system. On Earth, technology proved that irises couldn't be replicated. Everyone was different, and in the immortal martial continent, everyone's blood was different. When Jiang Xiu entered the Tianqing school, he went through a complete procedure and had his blood collected. Later on, when he became the sect leader, his blood was even enshrined in the ancestral hall. Now many people suspected that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. Their identities were different, and their cultivation systems were different. It felt a little far-fetched. However, if even their names were the same, there was really no way to explain it. Once the situation escalated to the point of having to do a blood test, it would be irreversible. And his information was hidden in the scripture depository. The information from more than 3,000 years ago should be in a very old library. However, when Jiang Xiu was halfway there, he heard a commotion in the distance. Many disciples rushed forward. Then they saw thick smoke billowing from the mountain peak in the distance. Jiang Xiu hurriedly pulled a disciple. "Senior brother, what happened?" That senior brother said anxiously, "The library of the scripture depository is on fire." Ha! Jiang Xiu was stunned. He was just about to destroy Jiang Luoxia's information when the scripture depository caught fire. This was too much of a coincidence. "Senior brother, which part of the scripture depository is on fire?" "It's those old buildings." Jiang Xiu's eyes almost popped out. Of course, his information was kept in the old buildings. At this moment, he felt that someone wanted to destroy his information too. Could it be that someone knows my identity and wants to help me? "Do you want to go and put out the fire together?" For immortal cultivators, putting out a fire wasn't a difficult task. They didn't need to carry buckets of water to put out the fire. Even if the fire was big, a few disciples could summon heavenly water to put it out. "I'll go first." That person hurriedly rushed over. Jiang Xiu, on the other hand, dismissed the idea. If he were to appear at the scene of the fire now, it would inevitably arouse people's suspicions and bring disaster upon himself. Since someone was willing to help, he would save himself the risk. Who could it be? Jiang Xiu was very curious and also very nervous. In his mind, he actually thought of the old god elementalist who had come to pick him up today. He knew that Jiang Luoxia's name, before he transcended mortality, was Jiang Xiu. Is it really him? Jiang Xiu would definitely not directly verify this matter. In fact, he would not even try to verify this matter. The human heart was unpredictable. He believed in himself more. Returning to Divine Cultivator Peak, Zhao Rongshan had already prepared lunch. Jiang Xiu had been locked up for so many days. Although he delivered food every day, it was not as steady as when Jiang Xiu was eating in front of him. "Something has happened outside. I heard that the scripture storage peak is on fire." Xiaoye and Wang Xinya, the two servant girls, heard the gossip from the side. Jiang Xiu did not bat an eyelid, minding his own business as he ate his food. "Fire? Is it bad?" Zhao Rongshan asked. "I heard that the fire is very big. More than half of the scripture storage peak is on fire." It was autumn now, and the leaves were dry. When the wind blew, the fire would spread. It could not be controlled. There had once been a situation where the fire burned for more than 10 days. It was also fortunate that there were many immortal cultivators in Tianqing school. Otherwise, the fire would not have been extinguished. It's so exaggerated. Zhao Rongshan was very shocked. It's so big. Xiaoya said. It's broad daylight and there are no lights. Where did the fire come from? There's no reason at all. Therefore, some people speculate that someone deliberately set the fire. Jiang Xiu's chopsticks paused, and his expression gradually changed. He originally thought that someone was helping him, but now it seemed that the possibility of someone harming him was greater. However, Jiang Xiu's worries were groundless. The scripture storage peak's pavilion being burned did not mean that it would be linked to him. However, if it was premeditated, then it would be very troublesome. It would be very difficult for him to avoid a blood test. Perhaps the situation was not that bad. Jiang Xiu was a bit puzzled. What mistake did he make that made these people suspect that he was Jiang Luoxia? Wasn't Jiang Luoxia already dead? Why would they associate him with a dead person? At this moment, in the main hall of the third peak, the sect master of the Ji Dao sect sat on the high seat. The law-enforcing elder was standing outside. Originally, if it was just an accidental fire, this matter would not have been blown out of proportion. However, rumors were flying everywhere that someone deliberately set the fire. What was the other party trying to burn? Are you sure that someone deliberately set the fire? The law-enforcing elder nodded. Someone did it deliberately. The scripture storage peak is the most taboo. What's even stranger is that when the fire broke out, the disciples all left because they had something to do. Someone must have done it deliberately. Have you found the person? The law-enforcing elder said. Not yet, but it isn't difficult to investigate. We can find the reason why the disciples left. Sect master, please wait a moment. We should be able to find the person in less than half an hour. Ji Dao sect's face was cold. Not long after, someone was brought back from the outer hall. It was an inner disciple. The law-enforcing elder asked, "Is it him?" The disciple's gaze was evasive. Replying to elder, "It is this person. I asked the disciples of the scripture storage peak, and he was the one who led them away. This person is the inner disciple Wu Kong," the law-enforcing elder said. "You set the fire." Wu Tsong wanted to refute, but he could not bring himself to say it. In the end, he could only nod. "Why did you set the fire?" Wu Tsong lowered his head and said regretfully, "Someone gave me a bottle of soul pills and said that I set the scripture storage peak on fire. I couldn't resist the temptation, and did as I was told." "Who was it?" Wu Tsong shook his head and said, "I don't know. He was masked so I couldn't see his face." Sitting above, Ji Dao sect fell into deep thought. The scripture storage peak only has information about the disciples who entered the sect. What did he want to hide? The law-enforcing elder's expression was uncertain. He thought of something, but he definitely could not say it out loud. While he was puzzled, he also felt incomparably shocked. Ji Daozong got down from his seat and walked away. The law enforcement elder and the others hurriedly followed him. Surprisingly, Ji Daozong was heading towards the scripture depository peak. At this moment, the scripture storage peak was in a mess. The air was filled with the unpleasant smell of fireworks. The pavilion had collapsed to the ground. The weather was dry and the fire had not been put out immediately. The fire had spread and it was already very good that it could be saved. "Sect master, what are you looking for?" Ji Dao sect identified the direction. Speaking of which, he had not been here for a long time. Other than registering information back then, he had also brought a few junior brothers here to register. Which scripture storage peak has the information about the disciples who entered the sect more than 3,000 years ago? Law-enforcing elder Xia Shun's eyes widened. "Sect master, why are you asking this? You just have to answer me. If you can't answer, then find someone who knows." Law-enforcing elder pointed to the distance. "It should be that one." It was the core area. Ji Dao sect walked over and looked around. "If I'm not wrong, the fire should have started here." "As expected." "What?" Ji Dao sect said. "In the information of more than 3,000 years, there are not many people who are still alive. However, among the people who died, there is information about a person who has a lot to do with the current situation." "Who?" Law-enforcing elder asked while knowing the answer. "Jiang Lu. The expressions of the people around him all changed in unison. Law enforcing elder said, "This subordinate doesn't quite understand what sect master means." That person's purpose in burning down the building was to burn Jiang Luoxia's information. There was also a formation in the scripture storage peak. If one took something out, they would be discovered. Therefore, burning it was the best way to confuse them. However, he had underestimated the intelligence of others. Of course, it was possible that he had done it on purpose. What is there to hide about Sect Master Zhang's information? Everyone is familiar with his matters. Ji Dao Sect shook his head and said, "There must be a secret hidden inside." "Perhaps it's," Ji Dao Sect spoke halfway, but his face turned pale and he could not continue. The law-enforcing elder and several other elders were waiting for him to continue. Perhaps, Ji Dao Sect felt his heartbeat accelerate at this moment. A sense of fear that he had never felt before weighed down on his heart. He could not seem to say what he wanted to say next. He did not dare to believe it. Was this that pusher? Was he pretending to be mysterious? However, if he continued, it would be a bloody step. If it really reached that step, if the fake had to be exposed, could it be that he really was Jiang Luoxia? Chapter 550. No one would expose themselves unless they wanted to expose the truth. Ji Daozong's face became even paler. Was Jiang Luoxia really not dead? Was it him? Did you burn all the scrolls inside? A disciple with a dusty face came out and said, reporting to Sect Master, the scrolls inside were all burned. Not even a fragment was left. Ji Daozong's gaze swept over the people present. He knew that only a certain elder of the sect could do such a thing. Investigate thoroughly. Yes. Ji Daozong's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. Regardless of whether he was dead or alive, he was no longer someone you could shake. If it really was you, a mere god cultivator, what could you do? Tell Jiang Xiu to come to the main peak. With that, he shook his cloak and turned to leave. The few elders who stayed behind had uncertain expressions. Was the sect master going to cut off all means of retreat? Was he going to do a blood test? Law enforcement elder Xiaoshan said, "This is also good. It will prevent people from secretly dying. It will also prevent people from thinking too much." Law enforcement elder is right. Ji Daozong returned to the main peak and had people go to the ancestral hall. Only the sect masters of each generation were qualified to have a memorial tablet. The ancestral hall was filled with memorial tablets. There were more than 200 of them. It was said that the oldest sect master had been in power for more than 2,000 years. Jiang Xiu wasn't considered short, but he had been in power for more than 700 years. The shortest sect master had been in power for less than 100 years, and had died at the hands of an enemy. Ji Daozong's eldest true disciple, Shen Kuan, came to Jiang Luoxia's memorial tablet. There was a small bottle hanging on the tablet. He inserted a silver needle into it and drew some blood. In the main hall of the main peak, all the elders of the Ji Dao sect were present. They were divided into 2 rows, and although there were quite a few of them, no one dared to say anything. Ji Daozong naturally didn't want to make such a big fuss. If Jiang Xiu was really Jiang Luoxia, he naturally wanted to deal with Jiang Xiu in private and kill him again. However, it wasn't easy to take the blood of the previous sect master out of the ancestral hall. The procedures were complicated, and it wasn't something that Ji Daozong could decide alone. Therefore, he had no choice but to make it public. Everyone felt very strange. If Jiang Xiu was really Jiang Luoxia, the elders should have forced Ji Daozong to do the blood test. Why did he want to do it himself? What benefit did this have? No one could figure it out. However, for the Ji Daozong to be able to become the sect master of the Celestial Motion sect, he was naturally an extremely intelligent person. Perhaps he didn't want to wait until he was forced to that point and lose his dignity. If it really came to that point, his situation might get out of control. When Jiang Xiu stepped foot into the main hall, not a trace of emotion could be seen on his face. However, his eyes were filled with a sense of familiarity as he looked around. This place should have belonged to him, and so should the seat at the top of the hall. However, not only did this place not belong to him, but it might even become his burial ground. When he stepped in, everyone's eyes were fixed on him. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became extremely tense. In the courtyard of the main peak's back hall, the flowers in the potted plant were accidentally cut. Madame Ji turned around with astonishment. What did you say? The sect master wants to test Jiang Luoxia and Jiang Xiu's blood? Yes, the sect master has gathered all the elders. They're already in the main hall. Madame Ji felt her heart beating wildly. She didn't know why she was afraid. It was just an instinct. Her reason told her that there was nothing to be afraid of. Jiang Xiu couldn't be Jiang Luoxia. It was impossible. Is that so? That's good too. It'll block the mouths of those who say Jiang Luoxia isn't dead. It'll prevent them from disturbing the peace of the sect. The person on the side said, I heard that it was caused by the burning of the scripture depository's library. That fire was deliberately set by someone. They deliberately burned the entry materials from 3,000 years ago, including Jiang Luoxia. Madame Ji asked, why is that? The person hesitated for a moment before saying, this lowly one also heard that Jiang Luoxia's name, before he ascended to the mortal world, was Jiang Xiu. Madame Ji's body trembled. Jiang Luoxia's name, before he ascended to the mortal world, was Jiang Xiu? She now understood why the Ji Daoist sect had taken this step. Things had already developed to this point. If they didn't take the initiative, they might be forced into a desperate situation. Are you sure? The person nodded. Let's go to the main hall. In the main hall, the Ji Daoist sect's eyes were fixed on Jiang Xiu as he walked over step by step. His eyes twitched slightly. In his mind, the scene of him standing on the elder's seat and looking up at that insufferably arrogant expert walking to the sect master's throne appeared. He had seen this scene countless times, but today he suddenly recalled it. Disciple Jiang Xiu greets the sect master. Jiang Xiu crossed his arms and bowed. Forget it. Jiang Xiu knew that things were bad when he heard about the fire. He didn't expect that the Ji Daoist sect would summon him to the main hall so quickly. Moreover, all the elders were present. This matter was serious. Gu Diqian's cold eyes swept over him. It was incomparably terrifying. The pain of losing his son was like a poisonous snake tormenting him every day. There wasn't a moment when he didn't want to tear Jiang Xiu to pieces. However, there was no opportunity. Jiang Xiu had been in the disciplinary hall's prison all this time. He had just come out when he was called to the main hall. I wonder why the sect master has summoned this disciple. Ji Daoist sect looked at Jiang Xiu. The man in front of him looked very similar to Jiang Luoxia, not to mention a new disciple like him. Even a senior like the disciplinary elder would feel uneasy when entering the main hall. However, he was so calm. This kind of temperament was truly impressive. You're not afraid? Ji Daoist sect didn't answer the question. Jiang Xiu smiled and said, afraid? Why would I be afraid? You ordered people to set fire to the scripture depository peak's library, right? Jiang Xiu was dumbfounded. Sect master misunderstands. I just came out of the disciplinary hall's prison and haven't sat down to warm my butt. Moreover, why would I burn the scripture depository peak's library? Ji Daoist sect stood up from his seat and slowly walked down. He looked at the elders on his left and right and said, because you wanted to hide your identity. There's information about you in the scripture depository peak's library. Don't be in a hurry to explain. I believe many people remember that more than 3,600 years ago, someone entered the Tianqing school. When he entered the outer sect, he was just an ordinary person. However, he was a heaven-sent genius. His cultivation speed shocked the entire immortal martial school. Jiang Xiu's heart trembled. Ji Daoist sect finally suspected him. He had suffered because of this fire. What does this have to do with me? Ji Daoist sect looked at Jiang Xiu's innocent face, but there was a trace of fear in his eyes. He laughed heartily. It has to do with you. Of course it has to do with you. Because you are this person. Jiang. Down. Down. Hua. The elders on the sidelines and the gate guardians on the outside of the hall were in an uproar. Although many people had heard the rumors, they were just guessing. Most people took it as a joke. How could the dignified former sect master Jiang Luoxia become the god cultivator Jiang Xiu? But now, the sect master said it himself. Jiang Xiu felt his mind shake, but his face remained calm. Sect Master, you must be joking. How could I be Sect Master Jiang? I'm a god cultivator. Sect Master Jiang is an immortal. Moreover, Sect Master Jiang passed away many years ago. Ji Daoist sect said, you don't admit it. Before Jiang Luoxia entered the Tianxing school, his mortal name was Jiang Xiu. When he entered the school, his information was recorded. This is why you wanted to burn the scripture depository Peak's library. Hua. The sidelines were in an uproar again. Everyone present was incomparably shocked. Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia? Sect Master Jiang. Jiang Xiu said, Sect Master, there must be a misunderstanding. Perhaps people have the same name. Out of 100 million people, perhaps only a few hundred or even 1,000 people have the same name as Jiang Xiu. Indeed, people have the same name. This sect master also thinks so. But the scripture depository Peak's library burned down. How do you explain this? Jiang Xiu said, Sect Master, this disciple really has nothing to do with the fire. Ji Daoist sect said, it seems that you won't give up until all is said and done. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. This sect master has already sent people to take Sect Master Jiang's essence blood. We'll test the blood. Chapter 551. At this time, Madame Ji had just arrived at the front of the hall. Hearing this, she stopped in her tracks. The hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Ji Daozong stretched out his hand, and a disciple brought a long table forward. There was a white cloth on the table and a golden needle on the white cloth. Everything had been prepared. It was definitely not a last-minute decision. Do you dare? At this time, it was no longer a question of whether Jiang Xiu dared or not. It was no longer up to him to decide. Jiang Xiu's face was very stiff and seemed to be expressionless. However, one could imagine the stormy waves in his heart. Whether it was a god or an immortal, blood was the foundation of life. This would not change. Ji Daozong and everyone present naturally knew this. Otherwise, the blood test would have no meaning. Jiang Xiu said, mixing a disciple's blood with a sage's blood, wouldn't that be blasphemy? Once the blood test proved that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia, the consequences would be unimaginable. Sect Master Ji Daozong would want him dead. Jiang Xiu couldn't remember what had happened in the past. At that time, many people must have betrayed him. Otherwise, Ji Daozong wouldn't have been able to ascend to the position of sect master. Moreover, these people would have all stood against Jiang Xiu. Once his identity was confirmed, Jiang Xiu had almost no chance of surviving. Ji Daozong sneered. It seems that you're afraid? This sect master thought that you didn't know what fear was. Now it seems that you do. This sect master was wrong. Jiang Xiu's face was a bit pale. No matter how strong his heart was, he couldn't remain calm at this moment. He smiled. I don't know what sect master means. Ji Daozong said. Then let's do the blood test. Come. Yes. In the Tianqing school, there was an elder and his disciples were all medical cultivators. He was also a famous godly doctor in Qingzhou. His name was Supreme Sparrow. He was a white-haired old man, but his face was bright red and he looked very feminine. However, he didn't look feminine at all. On the contrary, he was very arrogant and had a nickname. Poison Doctor. Poison Doctor Supreme Sparrow. The one who came out was a disciple of his. Medical cultivation had never been his main course. Just like formations and talismans, it was a secondary course. Tianqing School's main course was sword cultivation. Other than that, there was nothing else. The two disciples were wearing the same clean clothes and square hats. They lowered their bodies and walked in front of Jiang Xiu. They used a white towel to hold him. The other disciple was holding a needle in his hand. He was going to draw blood. A god elementalist's body couldn't be pierced by ordinary needles. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Jiang Xiu's forehead. With this needle, Jiang Xiu's life was completely over. He thought of running away directly, but it was too stupid. With so many immortal kings and great heavenly immortals present, with his current cultivation level, he probably wouldn't even be able to escape from the main hall. Opposite him, Ji Daozong stared at him with confidence. Now he just had to wait for the results. No one thought that he would do this. Jiang Xiu was a chess piece that had a deterrent effect, and even caused the sect master to panic. However, Ji Daozong was Ji Daozong after all. He dared to face the immeasurable changes that might occur. However, when things reached this point, everyone realized that everything was actually developing in a direction that was beneficial to Ji Daozong. Whether Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia or not, Ji Daozong had won. He would be able to escape from Jiang Luoxia's influence. "Let me do it," Supreme Sparrow suddenly said. Hearing the elder's words, the two disciples naturally obeyed. They turned around and handed the golden needle to Supreme Sparrow. Jiang Xiu looked up. This was a very familiar person. When Jiang Xiu was still a direct disciple, he had interacted with him. Jiang Xiu loved to fight, and was often injured. When he was injured, he would naturally look for Supreme Sparrow, who wasn't an elder at that time. Due to their frequent interactions and Jiang Xiu's generosity, they developed a friendship with Supreme Vermilion Bird. Although Supreme Vermilion Bird's position as an elder was decided by his master, Jiang Xiu was still a good person. The Supreme Vermilion Bird stared at Jiang Xiu's eyes. He had heard of a saying before, no matter how people changed, the look in their eyes would never change. From Jiang Xiu's eyes, the Supreme Vermilion Bird felt a sense of familiarity that he hadn't felt in a long time. At this moment, his heart skipped a beat. But then he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He secretly shook his head. He didn't believe that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. Supreme Sparrow took the golden needle and roasted it above the flame. Perhaps this was his habit. When he was doing this, he only made eye contact with Jiang Xiu once when his back was facing the crowd. After that, he avoided looking at him the whole time. Then, when Supreme Sparrow came over with the golden needle, Jiang Xiu could only stretch out his hand. He said in an inaudible voice, "The blood I want to test is not Jiang Luoxia's blood. It's the blood from your eyes during the direct disciple battle." Jiang Xiu abruptly raised his head to look, but he immediately opened his mouth and let out a soft cry. The Supreme Sparrow noticed Jiang Xiu's loss of composure and pierced the golden needle into his hand, using its movements to cover its expression. On the other hand, Jiang Xiu's mood at this moment was completely different. This was a trap set by Ji Daozong. Then it was very likely that he was the one who set the library on fire. He didn't believe that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia, but he wanted everyone to believe him. What a deep scheme. At this moment, Jiang Xiu seemed to see Ji Daozong, who was competing with him for the position of sect master. Jiang Xiu's blood was taken away. Of course, his blood was compatible with his blood test results. Although Supreme Sparrow knew that Ji Daozong was framing Jiang Xiu, he definitely wouldn't expose him or secretly change his blood. This was because once he made a move, Ji Daozong would definitely know that he was the one who did it. This matter could only be handled by him. Supreme Sparrow, as a poison doctor, naturally wouldn't do something like courting death. Jiang Xiu looked up and saw Ji Daozong's lips curl up into a proud smile. However, this smile disappeared without a trace. He opened his mouth and said, "Test." The result was already obvious. However, the atmosphere in the hall was still very tense. The elders and guards, including Madame Ji, who was standing outside the hall, didn't know what was going on. Jiang Xiu's mind quickly thought of a way to deal with this situation. However, the situation before him was a dead end. He, Jiang Xiu, originally had a chance of winning. However, this chance of winning was built on the premise that his strength returned to its peak. If not, then he would be a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. There was still a huge difference between a sect and an empire. An empire valued bloodline and orthodoxy. However, a sect itself was not a bloodline inheritance. It was a master and disciple inheritance. Furthermore, the position of the sect leader of the Sky Motion sect had always been occupied by the capable. "Please take the sage's blood. Please take the sage's blood." Jiang Luoxia was already dead. Everyone here used to be his disciples and subordinates, so of course they had to be very respectful. Blood was even more respectful than a memorial tablet. A medical disciple came forward to take the blood. In order to avoid suspicion, Supreme Sparrow even stood aside and didn't participate. Xia Shun, Xiaoye Lu Changkong, and the others almost held their breaths. More people lost their manners and craned their necks to look inside. If this were any other time, Ji Daozong would definitely reprimand them for being rude. However, at this moment, Ji Daozong wanted them to open their eyes wide and see clearly. Cold sweat dripped down Jiang Xiu's forehead. He pretended to rub his head and wipe off the cold sweat on his forehead. His feet were facing outwards, and he was about to hide behind the door. A blood-red light rushed up. "Close!" the disciple shouted. It exploded, it exploded, it exploded. There was an uproar in the main hall. Everyone was stunned when the red light rushed up. Many people looked at Jiang Xiu, and their eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Sect Master? The sect master was, of course, the predecessor. You're still alive? Xiaoshan, Lu Changkong, Xiaoye Gudiqian, and the others were all dumbfounded. A person who was already dead, and then they held a funeral. You even drank wine and sent him on his way. But after so many years, you saw him standing in front of you alive and well. What kind of feeling was that? Jiang Xiu knew that this wasn't the blood he left in the Tianqing school, but the blood from his eyes collected by Ji Daozong. In other words, Ji Daozong didn't believe that he was Jiang Luoxia at all. Therefore, Jiang Xiu at this moment, he suddenly widened his eyes and shouted crazily, "No, it's impossible. There must be a mistake somewhere. I'm not Jiang Luoxia." At this moment his face was full of surprise, shock and disbelief. Chapter 552. Everyone present was shocked. Back then, Jiang Luoxia was already dead. Otherwise, Ji Daozong wouldn't have been able to become the sect master. But what was happening now? Had he come back from the dead? The previous sect master was fine, and now the current sect master was alive. Now there were two sect masters? A woman couldn't marry two men, and it was impossible for the sect to have two sect masters. How is this possible? Madame Ji was also shocked. She couldn't believe it, but the truth was that Jiang Xiu's blood was compatible with Jiang Luoxia's blood. Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. He's still alive. Jiang Xiu said. No, there must be a mistake somewhere. I'm not Jiang Luoxia. I'm Jiang Xiu. I'm not, Ji Daozong said. Jiang Luo, now that things have come to this, there's nothing to argue about. The truth is right in front of you. I know why you're hiding your identity, because I'm the current leader of the Celestial Motion sect. You're just a tiny celestial god. Are you worried that if your true identity is exposed, you'll be suppressed by me? Jiang Xiu didn't say anything. He just shook his head at Ji Daozong, as if he couldn't believe that he was Jiang Luoxia. Ji Daozong understood his surprise and disbelief, but he wanted to confirm it. No, definitely not. Not only that, but I'll also return the position of sect master to you. As soon as he said this, the entire hall fell silent. Many pairs of eyes stared at the Ji Dao sect in astonishment. How many people yearned for the position of sect master? How much did the Ji Dao sect pay to obtain it? Now, it actually took the initiative to give it up. Even Jiang Xiu was surprised. Madame Ji's expression changed greatly. In order to obtain the position of sect master of the Ji Dao sect, her Taihua sect had paid a great price. Now they had only reaped the fruits of their labor for 10 years. They hadn't occupied many territories and they hadn't obtained many resources. This is also related to my Taihua sect. Madame Ji rushed in angrily. Just as she was about to speak, someone spoke first. I object. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Elder Tang Tianyang. He and Ji Daozong had the same master and were true martial brothers. Their relationship could be imagined, and this Tang Tianyang had always been Ji Daozong's right-hand man. He walked out and bowed deeply. He even crossed his arms and kowtowed. Sect master, you must not do this. Sect master Jiang is indeed the previous sect master, but he has been away from the sect for too long. He no longer knows about the matters of Tianqing school. Moreover, the current sect master Jiang is merely a divine god. The Tianqing school sect master has always been a capable person. For the sake of the sect, please don't retreat. As soon as he said this, the elders present all fell silent. After all, Jiang Xiu's strength was still low. Everyone looked at each other. No one dared to say anything at this moment. Ji Daozong waved his hand and said, "Since Sect Master Jiang is back, of course he will continue to be in charge of Tianqing School. I'm just a temporary replacement." Was he serious? Everyone was a bit confused. They thought that Ji Daozong was just putting on a show, but they didn't expect him to be so enthusiastic. Suddenly, with a plop, Tang Tianyang directly knelt down and begged. He said emotionally, "Sect Master, please don't. If you retire, outsiders will know that the Tianqing School Sect Master is only a divine god. How will they view our Tianqing School? If someone comes to visit us, how will we respond? At that time, our Tianqing School will lose face. As an elder of Tianqing School, I can't just sit by and watch the Tianqing School decline. If Sect Master must abdicate, then I will commit suicide in front of the hall." Ji Daozong's face showed pain. "Elder Tang, why do you have to do this? I'm just a temporary replacement. Now that sect leader Jiang has returned, he should be the one in charge of the Heaven Motion sect. If I don't give up my position, people will think that I'm greedy for it and refuse to leave. This will make things difficult for me." "It's very difficult." Madame Ji had been waiting outside for a long time. She couldn't hold it in anymore and rushed in. "I also object." Madam. The guards in front of the hall all spoke up. "I object as well. I don't know what happened to Sect Master Jiang, but it's an indisputable fact that there's no news about him. As a result, the Sky Motion sect is in a state of turmoil, with internal and external troubles. Even now it's still in turmoil. We still need to work together with our Tai Hua sect to control the situation. If you abdicate now and let others know that Jiang Luoxia is just a little heaven immortal, the situation that we've managed to control with great difficulty will definitely be messed up again." Tang Tianyang excitedly echoed, "Yes, Sect Master. For the sake of the sect, you must not abdicate." Several elders who were present also revealed a pondering expression. Although this show was a bit embarrassing to watch, but what these two said was also the truth. They didn't know what had happened to Jiang Luoxia's body. Although his talent was still there, but his cultivation was gone. Not to mention whether he could return to the peak. Even if he could, it would take many years. In the past, Jiang Luoxia had spent more than 2,000 years. But now, with the speed he was displaying, it would take him at least 1,000 years to reach the peak. Law Enforcement Elder Xia Shun said, "I also object." "I also object." "Me too." One by one, the elders stood up and all of them opposed Ji Daozong's abdication. Ji Daozong was in a difficult position. He frowned and looked very painful. "I understand your thoughts, and I'm very grateful for your trust, but this really makes it difficult for me, Sect Master." Tang Tianyang was so excited that he wanted to take his sword and commit suicide. The entire sect's comfort and the foundation passed down by our ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years are not as good as the Sect Master's face. Can't it withstand the boring gossip? Yes. Sect Master, please sacrifice your personal reputation for our Tianqing School. One by one, the elders knelt down and begged. Even the elders knelt down, so the guards present didn't dare to not kneel down. A large group of them all knelt down. Ji Daozong looked up at the ceiling with his hands behind his back, and let out a long sigh. Since that's the case, then my Ji Daozong will risk the world's great injustice and continue to hold the position of Sect Master. Thank you, Sect Master. Everyone in the hall shouted in unison. When everyone knelt down, only Ji Daozong and Jiang Xiu remained standing. Ji Daozong didn't even look at him. He was just a small fry, a small character that could be easily manipulated. He turned around and walked to his seat. Then he sat down on the supreme throne of the Sect Master. Everyone rise. A large group of people stood up. Sect Master Jiang. Jiang Xiu hurriedly shook his head and said, "No, I'm really not." Of course, Ji Daozong knew that he wasn't, but he still said with a smile, "Sect Master Jiang really likes to joke. Although I will continue to be the Sect Master, I don't dare to be disrespectful to you. Although you can't lead Tianqing School, you are still the former Sect Master. Our Tianqing School will still treat you like the former Sect Master. With your talent, it is only a matter of time before you regain your prestige." Jiang Xiu laughed in his heart. He had spent so much effort to put on such a big show. His methods were indeed amazing. Ji Daozong was still the same Ji Daozong as before. He had all the elders present obediently. Little did he know that the fake Jiang Luoxia he thought was Jiang Luoxia was the real Jiang Luoxia. However, although this matter disgusted Jiang Xiu, it gave him some benefits in the short term. At the very least, he would have a lot more resources, which would be helpful for his cultivation. In addition, he didn't have to worry about being suspected of being Jiang Luoxia. Now he was Jiang Luoxia. It was even uncertain whether Gu Deqian would dare to take revenge on him. However, Ji Daozong would never let him live. With such good talent and the identity of Jiang Luoxia, if Jiang Xiu was a dragon, sooner or later, the elders who weren't on his side would come over and kill him. However, Jiang Xiu was also certain that it wouldn't be in the near future. At the very least, it would have to wait until this storm gradually faded out of everyone's sight. Those elders who were originally ready to make a move now had no choice but to retreat. Ji Daozong, who was sitting at the top, held the pearl of wisdom in his hand and commanded all the people. The news spread like the wind throughout the sect. The former sect master Jiang Luoxia didn't die and had returned. Moreover, Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. Then Jiang Xiu's heaven-defying cultivation speed was explained. In Jiang Xiu's courtyard, Li Chang, Shangguan Zhaorong, and the others were all stunned when they heard this. Young master, is it Jiang Luoxia? Chapter 553. When Jiang Xiu returned, there was no expression on his face. He was as cold as usual. No, he was even colder than usual. The way Shangguan Zhaorong and the others looked at Jiang Xiu changed once again. The young master was actually Jiang Luoxia, who was known as the #1 genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3,000 years in the Tianqing school. That high and mighty figure, who only existed in legends. At this moment, the young master, who was already somewhat familiar to them, became unfamiliar once again. There was always a question in their minds. Was the young master really Jiang Luoxia? The most excited person was Li Chang. He really didn't expect that when he was in the Jialan dynasty, he had even thought of leaving. If he had really left, how regretful would he have been? No wonder the young master could defeat Elder Du of the Jiang family, who was one realm higher than him, with just a few words. If it wasn't Jiang Luoxia, who could have such eyesight? Although the young master's current cultivation was not as good as before, as long as he was willing to give a few pointers, the young master would fly. Moreover, being a servant of Jiang Luoxia was 100 times more valuable. When he returned to the Jialan dynasty, even Xue Xingjing would have to be polite to him and treat him as a distinguished guest. In the following days, people came to visit Jiang Xiu one after another. Moreover, they were all former figures of the sect. Of course, they weren't at the level of sect elders, but were from the dynasties, countries, or sects that the Tianqing school belonged to. Moreover, they were all depressed after the Ji Daoist sect rose to power. Many of these people were followers of Jiang Luoxia, and were abandoned by the Ji Daoist sect. When they heard that Jiang Xiu had returned, they wanted to look for him to change the current situation. Of course, Jiang Xiu didn't meet any of them. Although the outside world already believed that he was Jiang Luoxia, Jiang Xiu had made it very clear that he wasn't Jiang Luoxia. The Ji Dao sect was very clear about this. However, of course, there were also good things. As the former suzerain of Tianqing school, Ji Daozong arranged for him to stay in Zixia Hall, which was the third best place in Tianqing school. He was very engrossed in his acting. However, staying in a place with abundant spiritual qi for a long time would show its effects. Jiang Xiu knew that he didn't have much time. Moreover, of course, he wanted to act in a place with abundant spiritual qi, so he naturally refused. In addition, the Ji Dao sect had arranged more resources for Jiang Xiu than an elder would get in a month. However, Jiang Xiu wasn't polite about this and showed his greed appropriately. Compared to the benefits of the Ji Dao sect this time, this price was really not worth mentioning. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Under the effects of the Great God Sealing technique, Jiang Xiu's divine body improved rapidly. He could faintly feel that he was about to break through. This speed shocked even Jiang Xiu himself. In the past, he advanced quickly because his cultivation base was too low. But now he had already reached the heavenly god realm, yet he could still advance at such a speed. It seemed that his divine body had some kind of potential that was different from the current one. It was displaying a shocking power. As if this body was still in its early stages. It was still in its infancy. Due to this feeling, Jiang Xiu spent even more time comprehending the laws. After reaching the heavenly god realm, he would reach the great heavenly god realm. He needed to comprehend and fuse the complete laws. The fire element was the closest. He didn't consider comprehending the laws of the world and the laws of the world. These two laws were too difficult. The reason he could comprehend them was actually a kind of transfer. He had obtained them from the longevity stone talisman and didn't cultivate them himself. Thus he was somewhat lacking in confidence. After being stuck in his comprehension of the fire element, Jiang Xiu gave up on this and focused on comprehending the laws of wind, earth, and water. His goal wasn't to become a great heavenly god, or even an immortal king. Instead, it was to cultivate the great god seal technique, which was the 11th of the Fortune Jade Butterfly's 3000 Great Tao. In the main hall of the main peak, Ji Dao sect was dressed in gorgeous clothes and followed by a group of attendants. His extravagance was much greater than the emperor's. In the distance, Madame Ji saw him and went to greet him. However, she noticed that Ji Dao sect's expression wasn't very good. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Ji Dao sect said, "Nothing." He sat down in the garden's courtyard. The weather was getting colder, and the flowers in the garden were beginning to bloom. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of white that emitted a luster, making the world seem pure and white. "Did you encounter some difficulties in your cultivation?" Ji Dao sect didn't say anything and just muttered to himself. The heavenly reflection is the 9th secret art of the immortal martial arts. It seizes the fortune of heaven and earth. So it's not that easy to cultivate. Madame Ji said carefully. The heavenly reflection was a treasure that even the Tai Hua sect coveted. It was only passed down to the sect master of the Tianqing school. Ji Dao sect let out a long sigh. Madame Ji knew that she was right. Be patient and take it slow. She also wanted to say that she could give him some advice if he had any problems with his cultivation. However, this was a taboo topic for her. Ji Dao sect hated it when she asked about the heavenly reflection. After all, it's a secret art that can help one break through to the immortal emperor realm. If it were easy, then the legendary founder of the Tianqing school wouldn't be the only immortal emperor realm cultivator. Ji Dao sect was still unhappy. He wanted to cultivate to the immortal emperor realm. Otherwise, he would never be able to break free from the Tai Hua sect. However, this kind of thing couldn't be rushed. There must be a problem. There must be. Ji Dao sect was very depressed. He had always been conceited. Back then, when he lost to Jiang Xiu, he couldn't accept it. Now he was wasting his time on the heavenly reflection. Ah, that's right. Madame Ji suddenly thought of something. Although Jiang Luoxia's cultivation is gone, his thoughts are still there. His research on the heavenly reflection is older than yours. Why don't you go find him and discuss it with him? After all, he's known as the #1 genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3000 years. Ji Dao sect said disdainfully. The #1 genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3000 years? His cultivation speed is only fast. In terms of talent, he's only average. He doesn't have much creativity. That was the fake Jiang Luoxia. How could he know what the heavenly reflection was? Wasn't it a waste of time to find him? Madame Ji said. That's the same. Back then, Jiang Luoxia learned things very quickly. However, he didn't create a world-shaking immortal martial continent. Compared to his competitors, he's lacking in this aspect. After Ji Dao sect finished criticizing Jiang Xiu, he still frowned. I feel that my cultivation isn't going smoothly. I don't know why. Madame Ji said. Could it be that your luck isn't good? Ji Dao sect said. I have this feeling. Then why don't we find a great master of geomancy to help me look at my fortune? Tianqing school didn't have anything like geomancy. Some of the disciples only knew a little about it. In order to enter the immortal king realm, one must first face the mysteries of the heavens. Ordinary people didn't have this kind of ability. Thus they could only ask outside. All right. Make the arrangements as soon as possible. Madame Ji said. Speaking of which, it's a coincidence that immortal Lingxiu from Song Province is in Qing Province. Why don't we invite him? However, it's not easy to invite him. Ji Daosect frowned. Could it be that he doesn't even dare to give face to Tianqing School? Madame Ji laughed. Look at how anxious you are. How could he not give face to Tianqing School? I'll personally invite him for you. However, Anyway, when the time comes, don't put on airs as the sect master. Lingxiu Mountain is one of the top sects in Song Province. All of their disciples are extremely intelligent and mysterious. I heard that they usually don't leave the sect. Why would he come out? Madame Ji shook her head. I'm not sure. Is he going to Taihua sect? I really can't hide anything from you. Lingxiu is indeed in Taihua sect. Marriages between sects were very different from marriages between mortal dynasties. Usually, after a woman married a man, she would think for the man. After all, he would have children. The woman would also think for her children. Slowly, she would be biased towards her husband's family. However, sects were different. It was difficult for them to have children. All the sects were the same. They didn't pass down their bloodline. Instead, they passed down their inheritance through master and disciple. Therefore, even though Madame Ji married Ji Daozong and the two of them seemed to have a good relationship, there was still some distance between them. They couldn't be like a normal couple. Madame Ji's heart was still with Taihua sect. The Ji Daozong didn't ask why a wise person like Ling Su was going to the Taihua sect. He had his own status. In addition, the Taihua sect was like a dark cloud above his head. It was a taboo and he couldn't ask too much. Just like how he didn't like Madame Ji asking about Tianqing, Madame Ji didn't like him asking about Taihua sect. Chapter 554. A few days later, news came from outside the sect that an important figure had arrived. It was a wise man. Although he wasn't at the Celestial King realm, his reputation wasn't any weaker than one. He was a celestial master, and his name was Lingxiu. In the immortal martial continent, when many special professions cultivated to the peak, their status was even more respected than celestial kings. Although there weren't many celestial kings, there were still more than one or two. As for celestial masters, alchemists, formation masters, and doctors, there were very few who stood at the peak. Usually, everyone had something to ask of them. Over time, everyone held them in high regard. After Jiang Xiu reached the Celestial King realm, although his other skills weren't bad, they could only be considered to be involved. There was still a long way to go before they specialized in cultivation. When this celestial master arrived, the sect master, Ji Daozong, personally welcomed him. Jiang Xiu knew that they had something to ask of him. He couldn't help but feel strange. What did Tianqing School need from this celestial master? Jiang Luoxia's explosion had already been fused by the Ji Dao sect, so he could sit back and relax. The other elders also didn't dare to make a ruckus because of this matter. So his days should be very comfortable. Is it because of the matter of obeying the power? Recently, Jiang Xiu also heard some things. Tianqing School's control over the power below was not as good as before. Some of the power had already leaned towards other directions, and some had disobedient thoughts. The final reason was that Ji Daozong increased the taxes on the power below. It had always been the officials who forced the people to rebel, and within the sect, they also reduced the resources of the disciples. They concentrated a large portion of the benefits on themselves. Of course, this would cause dissatisfaction, but Ji Daozong was the sect master, and had the support of Taihua sect. Everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything. The incident with Jiang Luoxia a while ago probably had a lot to do with this. I heard that many people below are dissatisfied. Could it be that the sect master wants to find an earth master to change his luck? Xiao Yu, who liked to gossip, said. There weren't many people at Shenxiu Peak. Ever since news of Jiang Xiu being Jiang Luoxia spread, everyone quickly came over to get familiar with Grand Sect Master's maidservant. Therefore, Xiao Ye quickly found out about any gossip. Is changing luck useful? Shangguan Zhaorong shook her head. This is human nature. It has nothing to do with luck. After all, Shangguan Zhaorong was born in an official's family. Her knowledge was not something an ordinary servant girl could compare to. Do you know how to put on an act for others? Shangguan Jiarong still shook her head. Although there are some forces below who are dissatisfied with Tianqing School, Tianqing School has the power of the 13 immortal kings, and has ruled for hundreds of thousands of years. So what if they're dissatisfied? Schoolmaster Ji's position is very stable. No one can shake it. The head of Tianqing School had absolute power over the life and death of his subordinates. This was like a powerful country controlling a small country. He could do whatever he wanted. If these forces left Tianqing School, their destruction would be imminent. No matter how much Tianqing School exploited them, they would always be able to survive. I heard that schoolmaster wants to have his fortune told and his future. Wang Xinya brought the ingredients back from the sect. 2 disciples helped her carry them back. Fortune told? Xiaoya pursed her lips. Does schoolmaster's life even need to be told? He's a supreme master, an overlord of a region. He's indescribably noble. Humph, all of this should have been young masters. Shangguan Jiarong said nervously. Don't talk nonsense. It'll be troublesome if others hear it. Young master doesn't want to hear this either. Xiaoya hurriedly covered her mouth. She knew that she had said it. Every family has its own difficulties. Schoolmaster is the same. Outside, it's said that schoolmaster wants to break through to the immortal emperor realm, but his cultivation isn't going smoothly. Therefore, he invited a heavenly master to change his luck and have his fortune told. People were all like this. When their own abilities weren't up to par, they would always place their hopes on illusory things. Jiang Xiu was drinking tea in his room. He heard the conversation outside clearly. He thought that the news Wang Xinya heard was the closest to the truth. The Ji Dao sect was actually in a difficult situation. They were suppressed by the Taihua sect, and the elders below were unconvinced. The only way to break through this shackle was to take a step forward in cultivation, and become the one and only immortal emperor. Then, they would all bow their heads and ascend to the top of the Qing province. However, the immortal emperor realm was extremely difficult. Ordinary people didn't have emperor-level cultivation methods. According to the legends, the heavenly mirror was an emperor-level cultivation method. It was ranked 9th in the immortal martial arts. The founder of the Tianqing school was an immortal emperor, but that was the complete heavenly mirror. The one that was passed down today was incomplete, and what was missing was the most important part. Jiang Xiu also had the idea of breaking through to the immortal emperor realm after succeeding the position of schoolmaster. At that time, he was full of confidence and thought that there was no immortal martial arts that he couldn't cultivate. However, after more than 600 years, until the accident, he still hadn't succeeded. In fact, when he reached the middle stage, he almost felt hopeless. The Ji Dao sect's talent wasn't as good as his. Jiang Xiu was confident that if he couldn't do it, the Ji Dao sect wouldn't be able to do it. Looking for a heavenly master to have his fortune told was simply a desperate situation. He had never heard of anyone looking for a fortune teller when they couldn't break through. It was simply ridiculous. However, people were like this. When they couldn't do it themselves, they would always look for external forces to help them. Lingxiu had a feathered crown on his head, and was dressed in a long robe. His temperament was elegant and ethereal. Accompanied by Ji Dao sect, he flew across the various mountains of the Tianqing school. Accompanying him were Madame Ji and a few elders. Lingxiu held a dragon cauldron made of an unknown material. It was pitch black inside the cauldron, but there was something moving inside. This was the technique of a heavenly master. It was closely connected to the land, observing the flow of qi and the formation of heavenly fate. He kept shaking his head. Seeing him shake his head, Ji Dao sect's heart sank. He said anxiously, "Immortal, how is my Tianqing mountain range?" Lingxiu said, "It's very bad. Look at the 2 openings in the southwest and southeast. The qi can't be sealed and can't hide the fortune. The trigger is the reduction of the water. Wasn't there more water in the past than there is now?" Ji Dao sect nodded. Hearing Lingxiu's words, he seemed to remember that there was more water in the past. When he was young, he would go there to play. There was a pond below where he could catch fish. The feng shui of every place changes. When it reaches its peak, it will decline. When it declines, it will rise again. This cycle repeats. The Tianqing school has been at the top of Qingzhou for hundreds of thousands of years. Since the founding of the school, it was at the peak. After that, it slowly went downhill. Ji Daosek said, "Immortal, do you mean that our Tianqing school is at the bottom of the valley?" Lingxiu shook his head and said, "Far from it. Although the Tianqing school is not as glorious as before, it still stands at the top of Qingzhou. Sect Master Ji should know that the Qinghua sect is only a small sect now. It is bullied and has a hard time surviving. In the past, it was no worse than the Tianqing school. That was the bottom of the valley." Ji Daosek said, "Immortal, do you think the Tianqing school will reach that stage?" Lingxiu bowed to Ji Daosek and said, "Sect Master, please don't blame me. I also have something to say. Everything will be destroyed in the end. It is only a matter of time. The Tianqing school will not exist in this world in the end." Although the words were unpleasant and Ji Daosek was unwilling to listen, he had to admit that Lingxiu was speaking the truth. Any human action would only slow down the process of decline. But to Ji Daosek, this was what they were fighting for. Ji Daosek said, "Immortal, please enlighten me." Lingxiu said, "The heavenly water is already running out. Once the water in a mountain range starts to decrease, it means that the mountain range is declining. This is irreversible. Sooner or later, the water here will completely dry up. At that time, the Tianqing school will probably have been destroyed. Therefore, if Ji Dao sect wants to revive the sect, it is impossible here. The only way is to move the sect." "What?" The elders beside him all cried out. Ji Dao sect also widened his eyes. Move the sect? This was a huge matter. The Tianqing school had been rooted in the Tianqing mountain range for hundreds of thousands of years. It left behind countless traces of its ancestors and hid countless secrets. Many disciples could find their own opportunities in this mountain range. Once it was moved, its history, foundation, and everything else might no longer exist. "Yes, move the sect," Lingxiu said. "Sect Master didn't ask me if you have a chance to become an immortal emperor." Yes, Sect Master has the signs of an immortal emperor. But being trapped in this place, it is definitely impossible. Sect Master was wondering if there was a second person who could become an immortal emperor other than your sect's founder. If Sect Master wants to become an immortal emperor, the fate here is not enough to support it. If we don't move the sect, everything will be an illusion, a beautiful dream. Chapter 555. Move the school. Hearing this news, Elder Xiaoshuan's teacup hung in the air. He looked up in shock. "Are you serious? That heavenly master really said that?" He stood up uncontrollably. "What about the schoolmaster? What's his attitude?" The man standing opposite him said, "I'm not sure, but it seems that the schoolmaster is quite moved." Lingxiu said that the luck of the Tianqing mountain range is constantly declining. If we don't move, it will only get worse. Lingxiu was the most famous heavenly master in the immortal martial continent. It was said that this person had never seen wrong, nor had he ever said anything wrong. Not only that, the elders of the Celestial Motion sect could also feel that the Celestial Motion sect was going downhill. Their reputation was constantly falling. Even though there was Jiang Luoxia back then, Jiang Luoxia's reputation was too great. Everyone only knew about Jiang Luoxia and didn't pay attention to the fact that Jiang Luoxia was a disciple of the Tianqing school. In other words, Jiang Luoxia's reputation was greater than that of the Tianqing school. It could be said that in many places on the immortal martial continent, everyone only knew about Jiang Luoxia and didn't know about the Tianqing school. And after Jiang Luoxia's death, the turmoil, the succession of the Ji Daozong, and now, the decline of the Tianqing school was the most obvious. Elder, could it be that the luck of the mountain range is declining? Although Elder Xia didn't want to admit it, there was indeed such a possibility. However, he would never admit it. He frowned. The Tianqing school had been here for hundreds of thousands of years, and was deeply rooted. This was their country, their home. In the immortal martial continent, this concept was still very strong. Fallen leaves had to return to their roots. No matter what they experienced outside, they wanted to come back before they died. They wanted to return to their own school, the school that taught and nurtured them. Didn't Jiang Xiu think so too? With his talent, coupled with the great God-sealing technique and the minor fate technique, he could completely start a new world. There was no need to take such a risk. However, he was still attached to the Tianqing school because there were old friends and his past here. He couldn't give up. Move the school. This was simply unimaginable. The sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. A man hurriedly walked in and said, "Disciplinary elder, have you heard? Sect master wants to move the sect." Xia Shun's expression changed. Just a moment ago, Ling Su had only suggested that the Ji Dao sect move. How did it turn into moving the sect in such a short time? If it's just Ling Xu's suggestion, the suzerain may not be moved. Moving the school is a matter of great importance, and it can't be decided so rashly. The suzerain's ancestors were all disciples of our Tianqing school. His ancestors are buried on the Mountain of Immortals, as well as palaces all over the mountain. There are many magnificent buildings, arrays at the foot of the mountain, and treasures left behind by immortals. It's not something that can be moved just like that. The more Xia Shun spoke, the more excited she became. The elder on the other side said, "If it were any other sect head, they wouldn't accept it. But sect head Ji, the possibility of him accepting it is very high. Discipline elder, don't forget that he is the son-in-law of the Tai Hua sect." These words had a deep meaning. The suzerain will never be willing to be ordinary. Compared to sect head Jiang, there is a gap in talent and courage, but his unwillingness to admit defeat is no worse than sect head Jiang's. In the past, we always thought that sect head Jiang won, but now the one sitting on top is him, the Ji Dao sect. Xia Shun's lips moved slightly. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Sect head Jiang is boundlessly arrogant and doesn't care about anything. He is so arrogant that it makes people's hair stand on end. He disdains to associate with others, let alone collude with villains. But sect head Ji is completely unscrupulous in order to achieve his goal. Xia Shun's expression gradually turned ugly. In order to ascend to the suzerain's throne, he was willing to marry a female disciple of the Tai Hua sect. What else would he not dare to do? This was a person who could give up the interests of the entire sect for his own sake. What about the others? After sect head Jiang's matter was exposed, some people all quieted down, fearing that the Ji Dao sect would settle accounts with them later. I guess they will only watch from the sidelines and be opportunists. Xia Shun picked up the teacup on the long table again, and walked to the edge of the cliff, looking at the skyline mountain range under the misty clouds. They lived on the third peak, so they could see everything below. How has sect head Jiang been recently? The elder behind him said. He has been living in seclusion. No, it should be said that he has shut himself in and doesn't want to see anyone. Some of the forces outside the sect that were once supported by him came to visit, but they were all rejected by him. No one was an exception. Xia Shun said, "Do you think it's possible for sect head Jiang to become an immortal emperor?" It's hard to say. In fact, many people rejected this answer. Jiang Xiu had been the head of the Tianqing school for more than 600 years. In other words, Jiang Xiu had cultivated the skyline mirror for more than 600 years, and still hadn't succeeded. How could he have made such a big breakthrough in just a few decades? Xia Shun said, "Do you think sect head Ji can do something that sect head Jiang couldn't do for more than 700 years? It's hard to say. Of course, it was also impossible." Xia Shun knew that the Ji Dao sect head was anxious because he couldn't make sense of it at all, or because the effects of cultivating the skyline mirror were not good. Of course, no one knew what kind of existence the skyline mirror was, but one could infer the progress from people's reactions. It's useless for us onlookers to see clearly. The sect head is the one involved. We can't understand the sect head's obsession with this matter at all. Once a person's greed tears a hole, it's hard to close it again. The next day, Jiang Xiu was cultivating when someone came to the courtyard. Shangguan Zhaorong and Li Chang had the confidence to reject anyone who came, but they didn't dare to do so when this person came. The person who came was the Ji Dao sect head's disciple Shen Kuan. The group hurriedly saluted, and Shen Kuan said proudly, Sect head's words are to invite sect head Grand Sect Head to the main peak's main hall for a discussion. When Jiang Xiu appeared in the main hall, the hall was filled with people. The sect head, elders, peak lords, tower lords, and the leaders of the various branches were all present. When he arrived, everyone's gaze turned to Jiang Xiu. Now everyone was treating him as Jiang Luoxia. Only one person, the Jidao sect head, knew that he was a fake. He had a wise expression on his face as he said with a smile, "Sect head Jiang is here. Have a seat." The people below moved a chair and placed it below the sect head's seat. Jiang Xiu was very embarrassed, but he still followed the Jidao sect head's instructions and sat down on the chair. It had to be known that the disciplinary elder, Q-sword elder, these important people of the Tianqing school had to stand. They really treated him as Jiang Luoxia. But Jiang Xiu himself couldn't show that he was Jiang Luoxia. He had to put on an expression of fear and surprise. He was simply a drama queen. Everyone is here. Jiang Xiu could be said to be a very special existence. In fact, it was quite embarrassing. No matter how strong and aloof he was in the past, a fallen phoenix was inferior to a chicken. In everyone's eyes, he was just here to make up the number of people. However, the Jidao sect head didn't necessarily think so. Jiang Xiu was the sword in his hand. Jidao sect head stood up and swept his gaze across the crowd as he said, "I believe everyone has heard some things. These years, our Tianqing school has been going downhill. Our reputation is not as good as it used to be. The forces that submit to us have left us, fought against us, and repeatedly challenged the dignity of our sect. We didn't do anything and we didn't handle things well. However, the truth is that the Tianqing school disobeyed us. Since I've taken on this great responsibility, I have to think of the sect. For this reason, I've specially invited the Spirit Void Heavenly Master from Sangzhou." The Heavenly Master pointed out that our Tianqing mountain range can't store water or wind. The water will dry up and the wind will stop. The fate of this place will rapidly decline. So, Jidao sect head looked at the crowd and said decisively, "I've decided to move the sect out of the Tianqing mountain range and to another place where wind and water gather. It will be the foundation of the sect for 1,000,000 years." Hua. Although they had already heard about it, when they really heard the news, the entire palace still exploded. Everyone whispered, and it had a great impact on their hearts. Even Jiang Xiu, who was sitting on the throne, was stunned. He couldn't believe it. The Tianqing school had been here for hundreds of thousands of years. It had gone through hundreds of sect masters, leaving behind countless memories and inheritances. The three words Tianqing school were deeply rooted in this place. Even though it was hundreds of thousands of years away from the ancestors who were born and grew up here, it was as if they could feel their existence in the unseen world. Moving away from here? Tang Tianyang stood up and said, "Moving away is good. Sect master is really bold." Chapter 556. Tang Tianyang was very excited, as if he had heard great news. Even his eyes were shining. "Sect master, if you can complete the relocation, your contribution will be comparable to the founder of that year. I'll be the first to support you." Ji Daozong nodded satisfactorily at Tang Tianyang with a smile on his face. This flattery made Ji Daozong feel very comfortable. In fact, when he made this decision, his heart was motivated by his own interests. He wanted to become an immortal emperor at all costs. He was afraid of burying the entire Tianqing school. But from his point of view, this was also beneficial to the Tianqing school. In order to become an immortal emperor, there was nothing that couldn't be sacrificed. At that time, except for Tang Tianyang, no one else came out to support the relocation. Everyone present was against it instinctively. Apart from the powerful ones, everyone was lazy and instinctively resisted the relocation. Moreover, they didn't know whether it was good or bad. Emotionally, they couldn't accept it at all. Gradually, the main hall became very quiet. "What's the matter?" Ji Daozong looked at the crowd and was very dissatisfied. "Why are you all silent? We were born in this turbulent era. This is our opportunity. We shouldn't be obsessed with the achievements of our ancestors. We should build on the past and create excellent conditions for our future." Ji Daozong's words were very influential. Some people present were also excited, who didn't want to make a contribution and leave their name in history. But moving the sect was really not a joke. There were too many variables. Not to mention the resources consumed, many traditions would be lost. The biggest advantage of a sect with hundreds of thousands of members compared to other sects was its heritage. But once the sect was relocated, all these would be lost. Moreover, the bigger problem was that the area ruled by the Tianqing school's subordinate forces could be considered as the territory of the Tianqing school. Once the sect moved away, how would it rule if it was too far away? They would probably lose their commander, or be occupied by others. Even now, this was a huge problem. I object. A voice suddenly sounded. The one who stood out was the law enforcement elder Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan said. Moving the sect is a matter of great importance. Once it's moved, it can be said that the foundation of our ancestors will be destroyed overnight. The 17 countries and 32 sects that belong to the Tianqing mountain range, which covers thousands of miles, will also be alienated. These were all fought for by the ancestors of the Tianqing school generation after generation. Yeah. If you move away, those people won't give up their territory and leave with you. Everyone else in the hall echoed his sentiments. Ji Daozong paced back and forth in the hall, as if he was pondering. Of course, he had thought about this problem before. The area around Qing province, especially the area where the Tianqing school was located, didn't have a mountain range with excellent feng shui. If he really wanted to move, he would have to move far away. Naturally, he would have to abandon the nearby countries and sections. Indeed, this would be a great loss, but he didn't care about it no matter how great the loss was. What he wanted was to become an immortal emperor. He could sacrifice anything to become an immortal emperor. Our ancestors were able to create the conditions we have today, and we can also create better conditions for our descendants. As the saying goes, break and then build. If we want to break through the current predicament, we can only give up something. Only by giving up something can we gain something. The people present quieted down again. It could be heard that Ji Daozong was very determined to move the sect. Once we move, we will lose our subordinate forces. Our income will be cut in half, and the resources of our disciples will not be able to continue. Not to mention that their cultivation will slow down. I'm afraid that without resources, the disciples will also be alienated, Xiaoshan said worriedly. These were all realistic problems. However, Ji Daozong said, how can the disciples be alienated? The Tianqing school has given them everything. They should also do their best for the Tianqing school. I have confidence in our disciples. Jiang Xiu shook his head inwardly. In the era of information explosion on Earth, he had already seen through it. Without resources, the Tianqing school was no longer the Tianqing school. Many militarized troops had mutinied because of the lack of provisions. This was inevitable. The benefits of moving the sect could not be seen for the Tianqing school, but the disadvantages were right in front of them. It was actually very obvious what Ji Daozong's purpose was. However, his words were irrefutable, and no one could question or refute them. After all, he was the sect master. Jiang Xiu, who had mastered the minor fate technique, did not believe in luck. Although these things had an impact, the most important thing was still the people. Because the Tianqing mountain range's qi had flowed downwards, the Tianqing school had not been doing well in recent years. As a result, Ji Daozong could not become an immortal emperor. Wasn't this nonsense? In the immortal martial continent, immortal emperors only existed in legends. Jiang Xiu had never seen a living one. Could it be that the immortal martial continent's qi, feng shui, and feng shui were all useless? This was simply the most absurd thing in the world. It was ridiculous that this person actually wanted to stand on the commanding heights of the sect's future and speak with assurance. But Ji Daozong did not let Xiaoshan continue speaking. He opened his mouth and interrupted him. No buts. Then his gaze fell on Jiang Xiu. Sect Master Jiang, as the former sect master, what do you think? Jiang Xiu's eyes turned cold. Ji Daozong clearly knew that he was a fake, but he still wanted him to express his opinion. This was clearly a threat. If he sang a different tune, he would definitely be dealt with. However, Jiang Xiu would not let him use him as a sword. He said, I am no longer the sect master of the Tianqing school. It is not up to me to make decisions, so don't ask for my opinion. Ji Daozong gave a neither hard nor soft reply. Just say it. Sect Master Zhang's knowledge is not something that we can compare to. Needless to say, many people present hoped that Jiang Xiu would say something. Although Jiang Xiu's image was quite different from before, and his cultivation was gone, the feeling was still there. After all, he had led the Tianqing school for nearly 700 years. His words still had some weight. Ji Daozong had made up his mind to use Jiang Xiu as a sword. Jiang Xiu smiled coldly and said, Since Sect Master wants me to say it, then I will say it for the time being. In fact, this kind of thing is not uncommon in dynasties, countries, and small sections. However, they have a premise, and that is to move the government residents to a more central position within their sphere of influence. It is convenient to lead the surrounding areas. There is no precedent for directly moving out of the sect. The risk is too great. It is not certain whether moving the sect will be better than it is now, but it is clear at a glance that the sect will have nothing except for some people and some financial resources. If you want to restore the sect to its current size, it will be impossible to achieve it without 1,000 or 2,000 years of painstaking management. Let me ask you, how many of you here can live until then? Ji Daozong's face gradually became cold, and he looked at Jiang Xiu with a bit more coldness in his eyes. Jiang Xiu's words could be said to be the most important. People were selfish. How many people were really willing to work for others? After all, the inheritance of a sect was not the inheritance of bloodline, but the inheritance of a master and disciple. No one was willing to just be a pioneer. What's more, everyone present knew in their hearts why Ji Daozong wanted to move the sect. If the sect had benefits, of course they would not oppose it. However, if it harmed the sect's interests, it would harm their own interests. It was impossible for them to agree to move the sect. Sect Master Jiang, this is your opinion. You are too pessimistic. The appeal of Tianqing School is far greater than you can imagine. Heavenly Master Spirit Void has promised to find a dragon vein for us. He already has an idea. The sect is located on the dragon's head, and it will definitely soar into the sky. Only in such a place where spiritual energy gathers can the Tianqing School regain its glory. Ji Daozong said, This matter is decided. After Heavenly Master Spirit Void finds the dragon vein for us, we will move the sect. Sect Master. Sect Master. Everyone in the hall was shocked. They had hesitated before, but after hearing Jiang Xiu's words, they completely understood that this matter was a great harm to the sect and themselves. Of course, they were unwilling. I have made up my mind on this matter. You don't have to say any more. After saying that, he coldly glanced at Jiang Xiu, turned around and left. Obviously, he didn't use this sword well. Not only did he not kill the opponent, but he also cut his own hand. In the end, he could only use such a barbaric method. It could be said that he had lifted a stone and smashed his own foot. At this moment, there was only one thought in Ji Daozong's mind, and that was to achieve his goal. As long as moving the sect could let him cultivate to the immortal emperor realm, he would not hesitate. Chapter 557. The news of the sect's relocation spread like wildfire. Everyone in Tianqing School was astonished. The matter continued to ferment, and everyone increasingly felt that something was wrong. As far as Jiang Xiu was concerned, if the sect had to move, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. At least, everyone had left, and he knew that he could go and find the resources he had hidden without any scruples. He could focus on cultivation, and strive to recover his cultivation as soon as possible. It was very late at night. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was restless, Jiang Xiu decided to go to a place to retrieve the resources he had hidden, and increase the speed of his cultivation. At the height of the upper three peaks, there was a waterfall. The waterfall was connected to the land in all directions, leading directly to the earth veins. There was the chi of the netherworld spreading out, forming an undercurrent underground that was incomparably cold. Especially in winter, basically no one was willing to go near this place. In the dark night, a figure flitted past, passing through this place and going down to the undercurrent. It was really frighteningly cold inside, covered with a thick layer of frost. The wind blew on the surface, making bung-bung sounds, as if the wind was frozen. When it blew on the face, it felt like a knife was cutting. This was the land of dark ice chi condensation. Previously, Jiang Xiu had collected the true netherworld water here. That thing was obtained by Jiang Xiu from the underworld region. He had spent a lot of effort, and had only managed to snatch it after a fierce battle with 5 celestial kings. Only a little bit of the true netherworld water was needed, and the cold poison would invade the 8 extraordinary meridians. It was extremely terrifying, and could be considered one of the top 100 poisons in the immortal martial continent. Everyone's expression changed when they talked about it. It was said that it could even poison celestial kings to death. However, Jiang Xiu did not snatch the river Styx primordial water to poison anyone. Although the river Styx primordial water was highly toxic, and a little bit of cold poison would invade the 8 extraordinary meridians, there was an extremely rare species of earth dragon fire snake in this world that could neutralize this poison. However, the earth dragon fire snake lived at the border of the underworld region. Specialized snake hunters might not be able to catch one even after spending 100 years. It was extremely rare. Jiang Xiu had stayed there for more than 30 years because of this. He did not catch it himself, but someone else happened to catch it, and he spent a lot of money to buy it. After the cold poison entered one's body, consuming the earth dragon fire snake's blood would allow one to undergo a complete transformation. It was as if one had been reborn, and their cultivation would improve greatly. Many people who were stuck in a major realm could easily break through with this method. Be it the river Styx primordial water, or the earth dragon fire serpent, they were both extremely difficult to obtain and extremely precious. Even if one was stuck at the threshold of becoming a grand celestial immortal, one could still make a breakthrough. After so many years, this damned place is still so cold. Jiang Xiu couldn't stand it anymore. His body emitted a warm light to resist the cold. Not only was this place cold, it was also mixed with a baleful aura. Whoosh! Jiang Xiu heard the sound of flowing water from afar. A monster flashed out of the river. Its face was ferocious, and its eyes were blood red. Its body was covered in scales, and its tail, which looked like a fish or a dragon's tail, was wriggling vigorously. It rushed along the river at an astonishing speed. Jiang Xiu wasn't surprised at all. This kind of baleful water monster could easily be formed in this river. Fish, snakes, all kinds of things could be formed. It was just that they came in different forms. However, Jiang Xiu didn't dare to be careless. This beast's baleful aura would cause damage to the divine body if it came into contact with it. It was like a human being exposed to nuclear radiation. He suddenly slashed out with the long saber in his hand. In an instant, the saber light was tens of thousands of feet long. The fiendish water rushed out. Jiang Xiu's saber contained the power of Yang, which was the nemesis of fiendish things. The saber light illuminated the wave that was dozens of feet high. The wave was cut open by the saber light. The fiendish water demon's waist was broken, and it screamed miserably as it fell. In the next second, another one rushed out of the water. The saber light flashed again. If the baleful water monster was a snake, it might be one. However, if it was a fish, it would come in groups. Jiang Xiu was prepared for this. He slashed out a second time, and another one came out. At the same time, he flew up and flew over the underground river. Baleful water monsters kept jumping out of the water. Jiang Xiu flew all the way, one saber strike after another. Whoosh! In an instant, Jiang Xiu had flown over the surface of the underground river. The river was filled with the pungent smell of blood. How many years has it been since someone came here? Jiang Xiu still remembered the first time he came here. It took him a lot of effort to kill a baleful water monster, and he almost died here. This time it was a piece of cake. All the way forward, Jiang Xiu frowned at an undercurrent. He still plunged into the water. One could imagine how cold the water was. If it were not for the baleful aura, the water would have been completely frozen. After Jiang Xiu entered the water, he really felt that all the pores on his body were standing straight up. He identified the direction left and right and dived all the way down. No fool would be bored enough to dive for fun. Jiang Xiu hid things under the water. Not only that, he buried them in the ground and pressed them with rocks. Passing through the group of troubled times, Jiang Xiu moved one of the rocks based on his memory. The mud on the ground surged up, but this did not affect Jiang Xiu's memory at all. It's here. He dug down. Not long after, he touched the sealed porcelain bottle. He buried 2 bottles here. One was the true netherworld water, and the other was the blood of the earth dragon fire snake. It was a coincidence. After he obtained these 2 items, he broke through his cultivation level. He felt that it would be a pity to use them, so he hid them here. He did not expect to use them today. Taking the items, Jiang Xiu did not linger in the water. He rushed out and returned to his courtyard immediately. But this night was destined to be a restless one. Just as Jiang Xiu returned home, an uninvited guest came to visit. He was dressed in night clothes. Jiang Xiu saw him throw a piece of paper into Jiang Xiu's room. He could have used funeral rites or spells, but since they came from the same school, the techniques would be easily discovered. This primitive method was actually safer. Jiang Xiu secretly admired this person's wisdom. Jiang Xiu stood outside the room and watched him leave. Then he entered the room and picked up the piece of paper. It said, "See you at dawn, Luoyingxia. Who would want to see me? Why?" Jiang Xiu did not want to go, but this person probably really thought he was Jiang Luoxia. Perhaps he could find out what happened before he went missing from him. Of course there were risks. But if the other party really wanted to make a move, with the strength of an immortal king, he could kill him instantly. There was no need to waste so much effort and go in such a big circle. He held up a lamp and checked the 2 resources he had retrieved. Although many years had passed, the things inside would only be purer. Some things were like wine. The older they were, the more mellow they became. He did not dare to test it out rashly. He could only resist the urge to cultivate. After meditating for a while, he looked at the time and got up again. He went out again, and went to Luoyingxia. This was the earliest place in Tianqing school to see the sunrise. When Jiang Xiu arrived, there was already a person standing there. The moment before dawn was the darkest moment in the world, and the other party intentionally did not want him to see his appearance. However, from the looks of his figure, he was very familiar. He should be one of the elders. "Sect Master Jiang, long time no see." Jiang Xiu said. "You're mistaken. I'm not Jiang Luoxia." He smiled. If he was in Jiang Luoxia's shoes, he would also deny it. "No matter what, you will always be the sect master in my heart. I invited you here today, because I want to tell you something. I also need your help." Jiang Xiu was a little helpless. "Since I'm not Jiang Luoxia, I can't help you," he said. "Are you really willing to watch the Tianqing school's hundreds of thousands of years of foundation be destroyed by the Jidao sect? You should know that once the sect moves, the Tianqing school will be destroyed. The major forces that obey will be divided. They will not have the ability to make their own decisions. The final winner will be the Taihua sect." Jiang Xiu said so. He said, "The Jidao sect is headstrong and has the Taihua sect behind them. They are powerless to resist. There is only one way now. Kill the king." Jiang Xiu was shocked. Only the death of the Jidao sect can stop the sect from moving. Jiang Xiu said, "What's the use of telling me this? We may not be able to do it with our strength. Although your cultivation is not there now, you have many celestial king friends. You can ask 1 or 2 of them for help. Only by killing the Jidao sect can we protect the Tianqing school." He did not turn around from beginning to end. Obviously, he also had some scruples and was worried that he would be betrayed. Chapter 558. Ji Daozong's cultivation was ranked among the top among immortal kings. Back then, only Jiang Luoxia could suppress him in the Tianqing school. Now Ji Daozong had succeeded the sect master and cultivated the heavenly mirror. Without several immortal kings besieging him, it would be extremely difficult to kill Ji Daozong in one fell swoop. However, he didn't have enough people, so he wanted to ask Jiang Xiu to come out and find him. Jiang Xiu said, "I've said it before. I'm not Jiang Luoxia. This identity was forced on me by Ji Daozong." That person laughed out loud. Sect Master Jiang, this isn't like you. Do you really think that Ji Daozong will let you go and let you deal with him after you recover your strength? Don't be naive. He will make a move on you soon. You disobeyed him in the hall today. If you had obeyed him and supported him, he could have lived for a while longer. However, you didn't know how to appreciate favors. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be soon. Jiang Xiu said. I'm just a small character. You guys keep saying that I'm Jiang Luoxia, but isn't Sect Master Jiang already dead? Otherwise, how did Sect Master Ji take the position of Sect Master before the 60-year period is up? This was the reason Jiang Xiu came to see him. You want to know how Ji Daozong stole your position of Sect Master after you disappeared? That person was indeed powerful. As soon as Jiang Xiu spoke, he saw through Jiang Xiu's purpose. Jiang Xiu said with a smile, I'm just curious. I just want to be sure. You all think that Sect Master Jiang is dead, but why do you still believe that I'm Jiang Luoxia? No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't have imagined that Jiang Xiu had lost a portion of his memories. The current him didn't know what had happened to him at all. He said, about 60 years ago, you left the sect, saying that you were going to Tsang province to do something. At that time, you wanted to become an immortal emperor just like Ji Daozong. No, you were even crazier. Ji Daozong had only cultivated the heavenly mirror for a dozen years, but you had already cultivated for 700 years. For someone who had never encountered a bottleneck in cultivation, you couldn't accept that your cultivation was restricted and couldn't move an inch. Perhaps you heard that Tsang province had a method and hurried there. At that time, everyone thought that it had something to do with the heavenly mirror. Jiang Xiu tried his best to recall what had happened. Jiang Xiu didn't dare to fully believe this person's words. After all, this person's identity was unknown, and he had a motive. However, he vaguely felt that he had indeed gone to Tsang Prefecture. However, a very vague image of Tsang Prefecture flashed through his mind. He had indeed gone to Tsang State. Jiang Xiu asked, and then? Then. He shook his head and said, then you went missing for more than 40 years and never returned to the sect. For immortal cultivators, 40 years isn't a long time. Nobody put it in their hearts. You're not a sect master who works hard for the country, but a cultivation maniac. What you want more is to break through and become an immortal emperor. But what everyone didn't expect was that the news of your death in Tsang province came. Jiang Xiu's expression didn't change in the slightest. He couldn't reveal any flaws. The more critical the situation was, the more he had to remain calm. To survive in the immortal martial continent, being calm was the most important thing. When you acted, you had to act like a thunderbolt. If you didn't act, or if you didn't have the ability to act, you had to endure. When Jiang Xiu revealed his talent, his master thought that he had a chance to chase after the sect master's strength. He had warned him that he had to remain calm and forget who he was and what he wanted. Since he didn't panic and wasn't afraid, he had to put his heart under his feet. Only then could he walk further and higher. You don't want to know the details? Jiang Xiu said. I'm very curious as to how Sect Master Jiang died and who killed him. After all, there aren't many people who can kill an expert like him. That person said. The matter is indeed very strange. After Sect Master Jiang disappeared for 40 years, Ji Daozong suddenly came back and said that he wanted to marry the daughter of the Taihua sect's sect master. You have to know that under Sect Master Jiang's leadership, our Tianqing school and the Taihua sect have always been on bad terms. How could two tigers on the same mountain get along peacefully? He wanted to marry the daughter of the Taihua sect's sect master. At that time, all the elders in the sect objected, saying that they wanted to wait for the sect master to come back and make a decision. Just as this matter was pending, news came from outside saying that you had died. The entire sect was shocked, and many people didn't dare to believe it. However, all of your trusted followers were also killed. Some of their corpses were also brought back. Jiang Xiu's face became gloomy. His disciples were all gone. He didn't see any of them at the successor battle. His people seemed to have all disappeared out of thin air. And Jianyi, who he had contacted on Earth, also disappeared without a trace. He didn't know what time it was here, whether it was just after he disappeared or many years later. But he couldn't ask the person in front of him about these things. It was too dangerous. Although Ji Daozong gave him the identity of Jiang Luoxia, he must not admit it. If he didn't admit it, there was still a glimmer of hope. If he admitted it, Ji Daozong would definitely not let him live. He could feel that what happened before he disappeared was related to Ji Daozong, Taihua sect, and even his old friend in Song State. Jiang Xiu asked, "Then what about Sect Master Jiang? Where is his corpse?" That person said, "At that time, we couldn't find Sect Master Jiang's corpse, but after the news came, Ji Daozong couldn't wait to marry a disciple of Taihua sect and rope in some elders. Some people can't wait to succeed the position of sect master, but there are still a large number of people who oppose. Because sect master's corpse hasn't been found, there is no way to confirm that sect master Jiang is dead." Jiang Xiu snorted coldly in his heart. Of course they couldn't find him. At this time, he should be on Earth. And then, we didn't see sect master Jiang's corpse. Did the law enforcement elder, Q-Sword elder, and the others all agree? Of course they didn't agree, but at this time the sky turned white. They had agreed to meet at dawn, but it wasn't long. Time passed as they talked. There was no time. If they continued to talk, the two of them might be seen by people who got up early. "It's going to be dawn. Go back and think about what I said. Ji Daozong won't let you go, so the best way is to let him die. Only if he dies can all our problems be solved. If he doesn't die, Tianqing School will be destroyed, and Sect Master Jiang won't live for long. I dare say that the day we move the sect will be the day you die. Maybe they will use your life as a sacrifice." Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, "I've said many times, I'm not Jiang Luoxia. You've got it wrong." That person didn't say anything else. Because it was dawn, his night movement technique would be broken, and Jiang Xiu might see his true face. He should be very afraid of this matter. What if Jiang Xiu sold him to Ji Daozong? He couldn't take this risk. "See you tomorrow at the same time and place." After saying that, he flew away. The movement technique of an immortal king was shockingly fast. In a flash, he disappeared from Jiang Xiu's sight. Jiang Xiu didn't stop. He turned around and flew back to his residence. He also wanted to return to his residence before the first batch of disciples woke up. If he was seen by others, he would be in trouble. But as he flew, he thought about why he went to the Tsang prefecture, what he encountered in the Tsang prefecture, and who was it that attacked him. He didn't know if that person knew what happened at that time. As for asking Jiang Xiu to find someone to kill Ji Daozong, he didn't think about it at all. He indeed had many friends who were immortal kings. This was because he was very warlike, but it couldn't be said that he was warlike. He hoped to break through to the immortal king realm, so he found many people to spar with. He wanted to improve his cultivation level, so he got to know a few immortal kings. Some became enemies, while some became friends. Now that people outside thought that Jiang Luoxia was dead, if he went to find them with his identity, they might not believe him. Even if they believed him, they might not help him. As the saying goes, tea cools down when people leave. Jiang Xiu didn't want to test the humanity of those old friends, and he didn't want to disappoint himself again. With his current cultivation and the fact that he had lost the position of sect master, he was no longer qualified to talk to those people. It wasn't that he looked down on his friends, but that he had lost confidence in human nature. Cheng Lingren's matter was a big blow to him. Chapter 559. There was a knock on the door. Zhao Rong heard movement in Jiang Xiu's room, and thought that Jiang Xiu had woken up. Jiang Xiu said, "Come in." Zhao Rong brought in a cup of spirit tea and said, "Young master woke up earlier than usual today. Have a cup first. Breakfast will be ready soon. Xiao Yu and Xinya are already preparing it." Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. On the long table in front of him, there were two small bottles. They contained the resources he collected last night. He hesitated and wanted to cultivate, but these were troubled times and he was using Jiang Luoxia's identity. There was no telling who would come looking for him later. This feeling was very uncomfortable. It was like a playful student who wanted to play a game, but his parents had to go home immediately. The bottle on the left contained the true netherworld water, and was sealed. The bottle on the right was open, and it contained the blood of the earth dragon fire snake. Speaking of snake blood, Jiang Xiu thought of his own life-bound divine artifact. His life-bound divine artifact was made from the longevity stone talisman, and it was restrained by Yi Bing's snake blood. He was a little worried that the earth dragon fire snake's blood would restrain his longevity stone talisman, just like Yi Bing's snake blood. Most stones that were stained with snake blood would deteriorate. It was a little risky. Thinking of this, Jiang Xiu took out a thin needle and dipped it in a little snake blood. Then he fused it into the spirit tea. Just by inserting the needle into the tea, a thick smoke rose and the tea instantly boiled. To think that there would be such a huge reaction when the snake blood came into contact with the spirit tea. Of course, normal heat would not be able to harm Jiang Xiu's divine body at all. His divine body was not lacking in that aspect. But this natal divine tool had an extremely fatal flaw. No matter how much his cultivation increased, Yi Bing's blood would always be his nemesis. He really didn't want the blood of all spirit snakes to restrain the longevity stone talisman. If that was the case, he Jiang Luoxia would have an extra door of life. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't go back anymore. He had already cultivated to the heavenly deity level, so even if he could preserve his little life, he had to start from the very basics again. The churning teacup was like boiling water, and at the same time, it was filled with a pungent smell of blood. Jiang Xiu frowned, raised the teacup, and drank it in one gulp. Shengguan Zhaorong saw this and also frowned. She felt that the tea was hot just by looking at it. If she drank it, she would be scalded half to death. She didn't even know if it was poisonous. Young master. In the next moment, Jiang Xiu's expression changed drastically. His handsome face turned a strange dark red, alternating between red and white, and his expression was one of pain. Jiang Xiu covered his face with his hands in pain, and his whole body trembled. Then he saw that Jiang Xiu's 7 orifices began to bleed, especially the blood that kept coming out of his mouth. It was really scary. Young master, what's wrong?" When she shouted, Li Chang and the other girls heard the noise and rushed over. When they saw this, they were all in a mess and didn't know what to do for a moment. "Quick, go and invite Supreme Sparrow Elder." These servants also firmly believed that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. The former sect master's body was in a condition, so of course he was qualified to find the chief medical elder. "No need." Jiang Xiu pinched his face hard. The blood of the earth dragon fire snake restrained Jiang Xiu even more fiercely than Yi Bing's blood. Yi Bing was just a small demon god at that time, and the earth dragon fire snake was an extremely rare spirit snake of the dragon species. According to legend, this spirit snake had the bloodline of the ancient snake god. However, the amount was always small. If it was more, it might really take Jiang Xiu's life. Slowly, the churning blood calmed down, and he eased from the severe pain. At this moment, it was really like being skinned. His whole body was covered in cold sweat, and his face and clothes were all covered in blood. It's all right. Prepare hot blood for me. I want to take a bath." There was a bathroom in his courtyard. Although the pool inside was not as big as a swimming pool, it was definitely more spacious than the bathrooms of ancient emperors. Jiang Xiu soaked himself in it, and slowly let the heat of the snake blood in his body spread out. Bathing was such a personal thing, so of course, only Shengguan Zhaorong, his personal maid, could do it. She sprinkled some flower petals in it, and then lit an incense in Jiang Xiu's direction. Finally, she came to Jiang Xiu's side and massaged his temples. She said worriedly, "Young master is really all right. Why don't we ask Supreme Sparrow Elder to take a look?" Of course, Jiang Xiu would not ask Supreme Sparrow. Wouldn't that be telling Supreme Sparrow that he was restrained by the spirit snake's blood? He would rather endure the pain than expose his weakness to others. "No need," Jiang Xiu said. "Don't tell anyone about this." "Oh," Shengguan Zhaorong nodded her head, understanding Jiang Xiu's worries. "But is young master really okay? Zhaorong has also read some medical books. Why don't I prescribe some medicine for young master?" Jiang Xiu was surprised. "You've read medical books?" Shengguan Zhaorong said. "When I was a female official in the Jialan Imperial Palace, the place where Zhaorong worked was next to the Imperial Hospital. When I had nothing to do, I would go there to play. An imperial doctor saw that I was obedient, so he taught me to read medical books. Afterwards, I learned medicine from that imperial doctor. Since she studied medicine, it was very likely that she knew about the earth dragon fire snake's blood. Young master. Although the earth dragon fire snake's heat is shocking, it is a great supplement for cultivators. Drinking it is very beneficial to the body, and it is also very helpful for cultivation. Why do you? Jiang Xiu's eyes shone with an ominous light, but it was a pity that Shangguan Zhaorong was standing behind Jiang Xiu and could not see his eyes. She was completely unaware of it. Sir, you're a divine cultivator, but I've never seen your natal artifact. This might have something to do with your natal artifact. In Western Zhou, there's a strange kind of stone. It's said that it was transformed from a giant in ancient times. At that time, the giant collapsed and turned into countless stones. Because the giant was a divine cultivator, his body was covered with talismans. Therefore, the stones scattered between heaven and earth were all written with talismans. Each stone had its own unique meaning, so it was named the Heavenly Questioning Stone Talisman. This Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman is not afraid of anything except the spirit snake's blood. Jiang Xiu slowly fell into a trance. Could it be that the stone that Xie Ting's clan had was the Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman? But Western Zhou was in the immortal martial continent, so how did Xie Ting obtain the Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman? Could it be that the embryo of young master's natal artifact was refined from the Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman? Shangguan Zhaorong's knowledge and experience far exceeded Jiang Xiu's expectations. However, her act of thinking that she was clever also angered Jiang Xiu. He definitely would not allow a young girl who knew his weakness to live. It was better to say that she was stupid than smart. If she was really smart, then she should have just let this matter rot in her stomach. If I'm not wrong, then Zhaorong can take medicine to nurse young master's body back to health. Jiang Xiu did not care about the small injuries on his body. After a pause, Shangguan Zhaorong's voice became very soft. Zhaorong knows what young master is thinking. Zhaorong's life is young master's. If young master wants it, you can take it at any time. However, please let Zhaorong nurse young master's body back to health before taking action. Jiang Xiu's eyes that were filled with killing intent gradually softened. It can be considered that Zhaorong has done something for young master. Jiang Xiu said, "You're dancing on the edge of a knife." Shangguan Zhaorong shook her head and said, "Zhaorong is not. Zhaorong just doesn't want young master to suffer even the slightest bit. Being able to serve young master is Zhaorong's good fortune." Jiang Xiu said, "Does Western Zhou have many of these heaven-questioning stones?" Shangguan Zhaorong said, "I'm not sure, the books only mentioned it." Zhaorong has never seen the Heaven's Inquisition stone, but from the pictures in the books, the mountains were filled with that kind of stone. Each stone had strange runes on it. From ancient times until now, there shouldn't be many left. Western Zhou's imperial palace must have some. The people there view it as a sacred object. Jiang Xiu used a wet towel to cover his face. It seemed that he did not want to continue talking with Shangguan Zhaorong. Shangguan Zhaorong moved her red lips but did not speak again. Instead, she walked away with light steps. Western Zhou. The immortal martial continent was really too big. Just Qing province alone had countless dynasties and countries. He had only seen Western Zhou in the records of Yi province, and had never been there. Although Shangguan Zhaorong exposed him, she also let him know what the longevity stone talisman was. A giant stone deity had fallen. Was there such a person in ancient times? Jiang Xiu's mind was reminded of a stone pillar that reached the heavens. That was the only description of a stone deity in ancient times. It seemed to be called God Buzhou. Its body was like a pillar with a snake coiled around it. Chapter 560. The Heaven's Inquisition pillar had a serpent's body coiled around it. This was the portrait of God Buzhou, a supreme god. How did he fall back then? Even now it was still a mystery. According to the immortal martial strange god's record, it was due to the collapse of the world. But of course, this was only a legend passed down from generation to generation. However, Jiang Xiu was able to obtain the world's laws from the Heaven's Inquisition Stone Talisman. This made the legend of the Heaven's Inquisition Stone Talisman somewhat credible. However, he was almost certain that the Longevity Stone Talisman was the Heaven's Inquisition Stone Talisman. The mystery of why his natal artifact was restrained by the snake's blood was also solved. The formation of the god of Buzhou's stone and snake's body contained a kind of heavenly law. It was also because of this that the snake's blood restrained the Heaven's Inquisition pillar. After soaking in the water for more than an hour, the hot blood in his body slowly calmed down. However, the snake's blood had caused a certain amount of damage to his blood vessels and blood. He needed to take medicine to nourish it. If he relied on himself to recover, there might be repercussions. At noon that day, Shangguan Zhaorong brewed medicine for Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu was indeed uncomfortable. After drinking it, he felt his body relax a lot. At such a young age, she had such medical attainments. Shangguan Zhaorong's talent in this area was not bad. After taking a nap in the afternoon, it was almost night when he woke up. Jiang Xiu lit a candle and flipped through a book, waiting for the arrival of dawn. Last night, that person only spoke half of the story. Jiang Xiu naturally had to listen to the rest. Especially, how he lost his position as the sect master. However, the truth was always unexpected. When Jiang Xiu arrived on time that night, that person was already there. However, his mood did not seem too good. Sect Master Jiang is here. He seemed to be certain that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. That's right. If it wasn't Jiang Luoxia, why would Jiang Xiu keep coming? Jiang Xiu said. After listening to half of the story yesterday, I feel like something is hanging in my heart. He said the story is not complete because no one really knows the truth. After the news of your death spread, the Ji Dao sect took the opportunity to expand, but all the elders threatened to wait until 60 years later. The Ji Dao sect had no choice but to agree. However, not long after, 3 of your old friends came to the sect. They unanimously confirmed that you were dead. They saw it with their own eyes. Jiang Xiu asked, which 3? Yan Longyue, the corpse god Taoist, and Hua Luiying, who is the most beautiful and the most famous in the world. These 3 are all immortal kings, and they are good friends with you. At this point, everyone is completely convinced. A cold light flashed in Jiang Xiu's eyes. Once again, he felt the pain of being betrayed. So the sect is certain that Jiang Luoxia is dead? He shook his head and said, of course not. Although these people are famous and their words carry enormous weight, our Tianqing school will never admit it unless we see a corpse. If they are alive, I want to see them. If they are dead, I want to see their corpses. Jiang Xiu didn't understand. If that's the case, then how? That person said. But your corpse really did appear. What? Jiang Xiu was incomparably shocked. He said, your corpse was found and brought back to the sect. I, as well as many of the sect's elders, saw it with our own eyes. There is no doubt that it is you. At this point, he was also very surprised. A person he had seen dead with his own eyes had appeared in front of him with a completely different appearance. No, that's impossible. Jiang Xiu looked calm on the surface, but huge waves surged in his heart. He didn't believe it. There must be a problem somewhere. If the corpse was fake, it couldn't be hidden from so many immortal kings. But if it was real, it was even more impossible that he was still alive in this world. There must be a problem somewhere. At this point, we no longer have a reason to deny your death. At that time, the reputation of the Ji Dao sect was the highest. Of course, there were many things that happened during this period. The Ji Dao sect borrowed the power of the Taihua sect and finally ascended to the position of sect master. He had expected most of the things, but the only thing he couldn't figure out was why his corpse would appear. This was really strange. Could it be that he was really dead? That didn't make sense. Jiang Xiu said, since you all saw Jiang Luoxia's corpse, why do you still believe that I am Jiang Luoxia? That person said, at that time, we even held a grand burial ceremony for you. And your corpse was buried in the immortal burial mountain. We saw all of this with our own eyes, but now, the tomb is empty. Sect Master Jiang is now standing in front of us, alive and well. Shouldn't you explain what is going on? Jiang Xiu thought to himself, I want to know what is going on. He said, The explanation is that I am not Jiang Luoxiao at all. Is Sect Master Jiang really not willing to help? You should know that the Jidao sect will never let you go. Helping me is helping yourself. He pointed to the immortal burial mountain in the distance. Don't forget that your master and your fellow disciples are buried there. Once the Tianqing school moves away, that place will definitely become a barren land that will be ravaged by birds and beasts. Do you have the heart? Jiang Xiu said. I don't want the Tianqing school to move away, but there is nothing I can do. After speaking, Jiang Xiu turned and left, a trace of pain flashing through his eyes. If he had the ability, he would never have let such a thing happen. Thinking of the faces of his master and fellow disciples, his heart felt like it was being ruthlessly whipped. He was ashamed to face his master and the ancestors of the Tianqing school. Think about it carefully. If you change your mind, come here at the same time. Spirit Void Master has already found the dragon vein. Tomorrow, all of our elders will leave the sect. None of them will be left behind. They will all go to the dragon vein to investigate. It will take at most 2 months to go back and forth. In other words, there are only 2 months left. We don't have much time. There was some urgency in his voice. Even if Jiang Xiu agreed to look for them, 2 months was a very short time. However, Jiang Xiu turned a deaf ear to him. All the elders had left the sect. This was something that had never happened before. That meant that the sect was completely defenseless. It seemed that the Jidao sect had made up their mind to move. The next day, as that person said, the Jidao sect led all the elders of the sect to the dragon vein. The matters of the sect were temporarily entrusted to the eldest disciple of the Jidao sect, Shen Kuan. Sect Master Jiang. A disciple from the main peak came to the door. The head disciple invites you. Jiang Xiu said, Call me senior brother Jiang. The disciple said, I don't dare. Do you know why the head disciple is looking for me? The disciple said, You'll know when you get there. When Jiang Xiu arrived, Shen Kuan was reviewing the memorials. Under the rule of the Tianqing school, all the major dynasties, countries, and sects would encounter problems that they couldn't solve themselves. Then they would ask the Tianqing school to help them. Or, if there was a conflict between them, they would ask the Tianqing school to make a decision. The emperor of a country was busy every day. Of course, the head of the Tianqing school had endless things to do. However, the Jidao sect was also someone who chased after the immortal emperor, so these trivial matters were left to his eldest disciple. Jiang Luoxia's blood was taken by Shen Kuan. Of course, he also knew that Jiang Xiu wasn't Jiang Luoxia. Therefore, he wasn't so polite. Sect Master Jiang, please sit. Jiang Xiu also didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. This time, I invited Sect Master Jiang to come because of a difficult matter. Gu Qiu sect is under pressure from foreign tribes at the border. They want our Tianqing school to send people to solve it. I thought about it and only Sect Master Jiang is suitable. I also want to ask Sect Master Jiang to make a trip. Jiang Xiu smiled and said, Of course this is my duty. However, he had a bad premonition in his heart. Just like that person said, the Jidao sect wouldn't let him live. Whether he was the real Jiang Luoxia or the fake Jiang Luoxia, this was probably a trap that would take his life. However, even though he knew it was a trap, Jiang Xiu had no reason to refuse. Well, then I'll have to trouble Sect Master Jiang. The matter over there is urgent. Please leave immediately. Jiang Xiu said. Just me? When going out to carry out a mission, they usually didn't go alone. Yes, just you. The sect elders aren't here. It's better for the sect members to go out less. If it wasn't for the urgent matter over there, I wouldn't have asked Sect Master Jiang to go. Jiang Xiu smiled faintly and said, Then I'll go. In his heart, he was thinking about who they would send to kill him. If they let him out of the sect, wouldn't they be afraid that he would leave? He returned to the courtyard and packed up his important things. If it was as he expected, he could only choose to go far away and wait for his strength to recover before returning to Tianqing School. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.